So picture this. It's the 432nd year of some ancient Chinese calendar, in a place called Qingzhou, Anping County, at this joint called Cyan Cloud Academy. And by academy, don't imagine marble columns and flying buttresses. Think wooden lattice windows, dust floating through shafts of afternoon sunlight, and about 30 kids sitting cross-legged on cattail mats, trying very hard not to fidget. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing, which is exactly the point, because their instructor, this hawk-eyed guy named Master Lu in a faded blue scholar's robe, had them all doing breathing exercises. In for 3 counts, out for 2 bursts. Focus your mind on your dantian, don't rush it. The rich kids in the front row, draped in silk, were making it look easy, faint wisps of white mist curling around their faces like they were at a spa. Meanwhile, the poor kids in the back, wearing rough hemp, were red-faced and bulging veins, looking like they were about to pass out. Me? I'm Chu Bai. I was sitting in a corner in a tunic that had been washed so many times it couldn't decide what color it was anymore. And unlike everyone else who was straining like they were trying to lift a boulder with their mind, I was keeping my eyes half open, chest rising and falling in time with Master Lu's commands. In, my belly swelled out. Out, my chest sank down. Real smooth, real rhythmic. Looked like I had this whole thing figured out. I didn't. What I was doing was the small qi gathering technique, the most basic breathing exercise in the Tao Meng scripture, the standard issue cultivation manual from the Great Zhou Celestial Court. It's the foundation of everything, the ABCs of becoming an immortal. Except here's the kicker, without the actual heart method mantra to go with it. All this breathing was just making me slightly less out of shape. That's it. I was basically doing deep breathing stretches and calling it cultivation. Then the bell rang. 3 deep gongs echoing over the whole county, and Master Lu put away his ruler and said class was dismissed. The tension in the room popped like a balloon. Kids were scrambling for the door before the sweat even dried on their faces. I was heading out with the rest of them when Master Lu's voice stopped me cold. Chu Bai, you stay behind. My heart did a little sink. I turned around with a respectful face already in place. You learn to do that fast in this world, and asked what he needed. Master Lu stood at the lectern, looking me up and down like he was appraising a horse at market. Then he said something that caught me off guard. He'd been watching my breathing during practice, and apparently my rhythm was steady, my inhales were long, and I was the least likely kid in the class to screw up and get chi deviation. High praise, coming from him. I gave the standard humble response. It's all thanks to your excellent instruction, Master. He waved that off and changed the subject. Asked me how long I'd been at the academy. 2 years. Then he dropped the real news. In half a year, the county's Taoist school would be holding its selection exam, and the entrance requirement for that exam was qi cultivation. Actual, real-deal qi cultivation, which I didn't have. My fingers clenched inside my sleeves. In this world, becoming an official was everything. And the path to officialdom ran through the celestial examination, which started with a cultivation test, which required a Taoist record, which required getting into a Taoist school, which required already knowing how to cultivate qi. Classic catch-22, except the stakes were literally your entire future. Master Lu cut to the chase. I had good aptitude, but my family had no cultivation legacy. The generic breathing exercises at the academy could keep me busy for another 10 years, and I still wouldn't achieve qi sensitivity. But, and here it comes, he had one spot open in the academy's intersect study. 3 months of training. Complete heart method mantra for the small qi gathering technique, plus a bonus basic technique like the spiritual eye or light body skill. He guaranteed I'd hit the first layer of qi cultivation and get my ticket into the Taoist school. My heart was hammering. The complete mantra. The one key to unlocking the immortal gate. I asked the question I was afraid to ask. What's the tuition? Master Lu held up one withered finger, casual, as if he were naming the price of a bowl of noodles. 10 taels. The room went dead silent. Even the dust motes seemed to freeze. The hopeful look on my face curdled into a bitter smile, because 10 taels of silver in Anping County was enough to feed a family of 5 for 3 years. My family scraped together maybe 2 taels a year after taxes and every other levy, and that was with my father working himself half to death. 10 taels was 5 years of savings assuming we didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't breathe. Master Lu seemed used to that reaction. Didn't push. Just said it was a fair price given my aptitude, that other academies charged 12, and told me to go home and think about it. Then he added, real flat, real matter of fact. The path to immortality is long, and if you can't take this first step, in 100 years you'll be nothing but a pile of dirt. I bowed, thanked him, and walked out of that lecture hall with the heaviest feeling in my chest I'd ever known. Stepping out of the academy gates was like stepping from one world into another. The quiet concentration of the lecture hall got replaced by vendors screaming their wares, hawkers lugging goods on shoulder poles, farmers pushing carts, and government constables in black uniforms patrolling with sabers at their waists. I watched those constables with a flicker of envy. They were basically clerks, not even entry-level, no official status, but at least they were on the Celestial Court's payroll, which was more than I could say for a farm boy with a head full of breathing exercises and empty pockets. 10 tails. I walked that dirt road home kicking pebbles and running the numbers for the 100th time. The Chu family had been farmers for generations. My father was the only able-bodied worker, supporting a sickly mother and 2 little kids. After land taxes and levies, we saved maybe 2 taels a year on a good year. 10 taels was 5 years of not eating. And if I didn't pay, no mantra, no Qi introduction, no Taoist school, no Taoist record, no official seal, no cultivation resources. And then for the rest of my life, I'd be hunched over in a rice paddy, praying some big shot from the agricultural department would deign to cast a spring breeze rain technique so we could eat. I thought about finding a private instructor, but the Great Zhou laws were strict. Privately teaching Taoist skills was a serious crime. The only wild cultivators out there either charged insane fees or were outlaws with bounties on their heads. Not exactly options for a farm boy. It was a dead end. And it was also the first dragon gate the Celestial Court had set up for mortals. Charming design. The sun was going down by then, painting everything blood red and stretching my shadow across cracked rice paddies. I stopped on a ridge between the fields, stared at the cooking smoke rising from our thatched cottages in the distance, and stood there for a long time thinking about 10 taels of silver and what it meant to have none. I pushed open the wooden door to our house, and the place was dim, lit by a single oil lamp on a wobbly table, the wick crusted with soot and popping every now and then. My 7-year-old sister Little Manx was in the corner playing with mud figures and launched herself at my leg like a tiny cannonball the second she saw me. My little brother, barely 2, was babbling and trying to follow. I told them to wash their hands, ruffled Little Manx's sallow hair, and handed each of them a wild fruit I'd picked on the way home. My mother, Mrs. Lee, was setting the last dish on the table, pickled mustard tubers, and a pot of rice porridge so thin you could see your reflection in it. My father, Chu Xianglin, was sitting on the threshold, knocking ash from his old pipe against his shoe. He looked up at me with a faint smile cracking his weathered face. "You're back? Let's eat." We sat around that wobbly table, the only sound being everyone slurping thin porridge. I held my chipped bowl and drank it down in silence. Every grain counted when you were still growing and cultivating what little chi and blood you had. My mother watched me wolf it down, her eyes full of that particular heartache mothers get. She pushed the few dried goods from her own bowl into mine and asked how I was keeping up at school. I gave a vague answer. "I'm keeping up." Then she started in on her real topic. Half a year, and I'd be done with school. She'd been thinking, maybe ask Aunt Wong next door to find me a match. I was a man now. Start a family early, bring another pair of hands into the house. In her eyes, 2 years of learning to read a few characters was already a blessing from the ancestors. The immortal Tao was way too remote. Marrying a wife and living stable was the practical move. My father coughed twice from the threshold and cut her off. "What is a woman like you know? You want him to spend his whole life scrabbling in the dirt like me?" Then he turned to me, this stubborn light in his clouded eyes, and said if there was a chance, I still had to try for the Taoist school. He brought up Guzi from the next village, who'd gotten into a Taoist school years ago. Didn't pass the celestial examination, sure, but still landed a post at the county yamen. Whole family moved into the city, living on the government's dime. In my father's simple worldview, getting into the Taoist school was the only way to change your fate. The room went quiet. I put down my bowl and chopsticks, looked at my parents' hopeful but conflicted faces, and sighed inside. Then I told them. Master Lu had kept me after class, said I had talent for cultivation. With a complete technique, I could reach the first layer of chi cultivation within 3 months. My mother nearly dropped her chopsticks. My father got to his feet, hands trembling, face flushing red. I knew it, he said, pacing the cramped room. A son of Chu Xianglin wasn't fated to stay in the mud. Then I dropped the other part. But the tuition fee is 10 taels of silver. His feet froze mid-step. The smile on his face stiffened into something blank and stunned. My mother sucked in a sharp breath. The room got heavy. Even my little siblings went quiet, sensing something was wrong. My father sank back onto the threshold. His hands trembled as he fumbled for his tobacco pouch, but couldn't get it lit. All we could hear was the click-clack of the flint. Spring planting had just ended, he said, his voice hoarse. Seeds, spiritual fertilizer, wiped out all the savings. We couldn't come up with 1 tael, let alone 10. In that moment, the back of this man who always tried to be the pillar of our family just seemed to slump. He was full of guilt. He knew his son had promise, and he was powerless to help. I put on a relaxed smile. It's all right, father. Master Lu said it's just an opportunity, not a guarantee. I'll work on it myself. Maybe I can figure it out without spending any money. I didn't want that weight crushing them. That night, after everyone was asleep, I lit a finger-length stub of candle in my tiny room and sat cross-legged on my hard wooden bed. The dim flame flickered against the mud wall, making my shadow swell and shrink like something alive. I ran through the breathing exercises Master Lu had taught us that day. In, exhale, chest and abdomen rising and falling in rhythm. I could feel a faint warmth moving through my limbs and bones, the soreness in my muscles fading, replaced by a sense of brimming strength. That was the physical boost from the small chi gathering technique. But that was all. After one full circulation, I opened my eyes and shook my head. Still couldn't sense the so-called chi. It was like a bottle already filled to the brim. Pour as much as you want, it just spills over. Just as I thought. Without the heart method mantra, this breathing was capped. Then I stared into the void in front of me, and with a thought, a pale blue screen of light materialized. Visible only to me. Name, Chu Bai. Realm, mortal. Acquired fate chart. Non-stop rushing, unceasing labor. The note underneath said the celestial Tao rewards the diligent. Any magic technique practiced daily would yield results, ignoring bottlenecks and achieving success when the time came. And then the skill line. Small chi gathering technique. Incomplete. Beginner level. Progress at 100 out of 100. Maximum level reached. Cannot be improved. I stared at that fate chart for a long time. It hadn't been there since birth. It woke up about half a year ago, after I'd been working myself ragged in the fields and frantically practicing everything I secretly picked up at the academy. At first, it only had the skill section. The fate chart came later. Non-stop rushing, unceasing labor. I gave a self-mocking smile. That really did suit my hard-working life. The name wasn't much to look at, but the effect was absurd. As long as I practiced, I made progress, and once the bar was full, a breakthrough was guaranteed. No guessing, no wasted years of practicing the wrong way. For cultivators, the scariest thing wasn't difficulty. It was not knowing if you were even on the right path. Plenty of people spent years in seclusion only to emerge and discover they'd been doing it wrong the whole time. But me? The panel gave me absolute feedback and certainty. I looked at that progress bar stuck at 100 out of 100 and felt less frustrated than resolute. The bar was full, but I hadn't broken through. The path was cut off. Master Lu didn't lie. Without the rest of the oral formula, this was the limit. Which also meant, by reverse logic, that if I could get the formula or find some other complete technique, I could use this fate chart to grind my proficiency all the way up. Since the proper path of paying for lessons wasn't working, I blew out the candle and laid down in the dark, my eyes bright as stars. I'd just have to find another way. You don't see a living man letting a full bladder kill him, do you? Next morning, crack of dawn. The eastern sky showed a sliver of light, air thick with that damp, earthy smell of early morning. The village roosters had barely crowed before I was up and dressed. I'd slept soundly, but right before drifting off, I'd heard hushed whispers from my parents' room through the rammed earth wall. Ever since I started the small chi gathering technique, my 5 senses had gotten sharper than a normal person's, even without true chi. I hadn't tried to eavesdrop, but I figured they were worrying about those 10 taels. I shook it off and headed to the courtyard to do morning chores. Chopped pig feed, mixed fodder, fed the 2 scrawny black pigs. rain or shine, every day. That was the unceasing labor in my fate chart at work. I felt uneasy if a day went by without working. Then I went to collect eggs from the chicken coop and stopped cold. The coop was emptier than it should be. One hen was missing. Our most prized hen, the old speckled one that laid the most eggs and was the biggest of the flock. I checked the fence, intact. No blood, no scattered feathers. No predator got in. Which meant my heart sank. Could my parents have taken it to sell? Once that thought surfaced, I couldn't push it down. Those chickens and the 2 pigs were the family's only valuable assets beyond the land. If they sold this egg-laying hen for the 10 taels, how would we get by? My younger siblings needed eggs for growth, and little Manx would be 7 next year. Academy fees would be another hefty expense. If my family fell into ruin because of my cultivation, what was the point? I dropped the basket and turned to find my parents. That's when the courtyard gate opened, and my mother walked in. Empty bamboo basket on her arm. Fine layer of sweat on her forehead despite the cold morning air. Pant cuffs stained with dew and mud. Cloth shoes soaked through. She'd walked a long way. I asked if that was our speckled hen. She dodged the question, wiped her brow, and pulled a patched dark blue cloth pouch from her tunic. Pressed it into my hand. It felt heavy and still carried her warmth. I didn't need to open it. Broken silver. For tails, she said softly, heading for the stove. She'd taken the speckled hen into the city before dawn. Gone to second uncle's house. My hand clenched around that pouch. Second uncle ran a cloth business, lived well, and let it make him arrogant and condescending. Looked down on poor relatives. Gave my mother the cold shoulder at New Year visits. She was a proud woman. She would never have gone to his house unless she had absolutely no other choice. The hen wasn't worth much, she said, back to me, ladling water to wash a pot. Gave it to second uncle's family so they'd have something different, and while she was there, borrowed a little silver. Added to the 6 taels we'd saved, that made exactly 10 taels for me. I stood there watching her slightly stooped back. She said it casually, but I could picture the whole thing. Before dawn, taking our most valuable hen, trudging miles into the city, putting on a smile at second uncle's door, swallowing her pride, begging for those 4 taels. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She turned, wiped her hands on her apron, gave me a weary but gentle smile. Told me to focus on my studies. Second uncle lent it. He can be nasty with words, but helping out this time was a huge favor. We had to remember the debt. If I made something of myself, I had to repay the money and prepare a generous gift to thank him properly. I took a deep breath. That pouch felt as heavy as a mountain, searing my palm. Last night, I'd been thinking of finding a way to do this without spending money. Now my parents had cut off any path of retreat. I tucked the pouch into the pocket closest to my chest. When I looked up, all hesitation was gone from my eyes. I told her not to worry. These 10 taels wouldn't be wasted. At the academy, when the bell rang and the other students poured out of the outer sect lecture hall, I stayed seated. I reached into my robe and pressed gently on that cloth pouch through my coarse garments. My family's blood and sweat. My ticket to knock on the immortal gate. After most of them had left, I walked up to Master Lu. He was packing his materials, looked up at me like he'd been expecting this. Asked if I'd decided. I said I had. I'd gathered the fee. I implored him for the introduction. He gave me a nod with a flicker of admiration in his eyes and led me not toward the main gate, but toward a stone door behind the lecture hall that was normally kept shut. Passing through it was like stepping into another world. The noise outside vanished. A serene garden with trickling water over rockeries, ancient trees towering overhead, air so fresh it lifted the spirits. Master Lu explained as we walked. The outer sect cost 365 won a year, a grace from the court, taught literacy and reason. The inner sect taught the true path to advancement. We arrived at a small courtyard called Comhart Hall. Inside, a middle-aged Taoist in cyan robes sat cross-legged under a tree, meditating. A cup of clear tea steamed on a small table beside him. The man looked ordinary, but one glance sent a chill through me. His breathing was so slow and steady he'd practically merged with his surroundings. Master Lu introduced him as Taoist Zhang, a cultivation instructor from the county Taoist school, hired to personally instruct inner sect disciples. I bowed low. Student Chu Bai greets Master Zhang. Taoist Zhang opened his eyes, gaze gentle as jade but piercing. Scammy head to toe. Acceptable constitution, he said. Looks like someone who can endure hardship. I presented the patched cloth pouch with both hands. My tuition fee. He took it casually, set it on the table without even checking. Master Lu chimed in about the bond being formed, told me not to forget the debt. I said I wouldn't. Induction done, Master Lu left. Taoist Zhang pointed to cushions and laid out the rules. Every day after outer sect dismissal, I could come practice for 1 double hour. He'd teach the heart method and offer guidance. How much I grasped was up to me. That's when I noticed I wasn't alone. Under the shade on the other side, 3 other youths sat cross-legged. One lavishly dressed with a jade pendant. Li Jinyuan, landlord's son. One cold-faced and starched simple clothes. Gu Qinghe. The last had a clever look and was sizing me up with curiosity. Wang Xiaolu. Taoist Zhang said the inner sect only accepted students with exceptional talent and temperament. Since we'd all practiced the small qi gathering technique to its bottleneck and paid the high price to continue, he presumed we were prepared to endure hardship. I nodded silently, found an empty cushion, and sat down. Taoist Zhang got down to business. The small qi gathering technique had dynamic and static skills. The breathing they taught in the outer sect was the dynamic part, mainly for body refinement. Today he'd teach the static skills heart method, the energy-introducing technique. Qi was the essence of heaven and earth. To achieve qi introduction, I had to open the mysterious pass and focus my mind on my dantian. He started chanting the incantation, and as the words reached my ears, all the parts of the technique that had been obscure and incomprehensible suddenly clicked into place. It was like a key fitting perfectly into a lock on a great sealed door inside me. Form the hand seal, focus your spirit, calm your qi, follow my guidance. I didn't dare let my mind wander. Formed the seal, changed my breathing pattern. This time felt completely different. If the old breathing technique was like grinding an empty millstone, now there was finally grain to grind. As the heart method circulated, I slipped into a deep state. In a trance, I sensed the air around me wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with innumerable microscopic points of light. Spiritual qi, guided by the chant, a wisp of cool energy, faint as a hair, drilled into my body through my pores with a deep, refreshing comfort. It traveled slowly through my meridians and gathered in my dantian qi si. Then an imperceptible hum resonated in my mind. Qi sensitivity. I was shaken to my core. The thrill of finally touching the threshold of the supernatural nearly broke my concentration, but I gritted my teeth, steadied my mind, and greedily absorbed every wisp of that hard-won spiritual qi. When I finally opened my eyes, I felt utterly refreshed. Hearing sharper, vision clearer. Even the fallen leaves in the courtyard looked more distinct. I summoned my panel. The pale blue screen had transformed. Small qi gathering technique. Skilled, progress 1 out of 200. That limit reached, notification was gone. In its place, a brand new progress bar. I let out a long breath, corners of my mouth curving into a smile I couldn't suppress. The path was open. As long as I wasn't restricted by the technique anymore, with my fate chart, there would be no more bottlenecks. The last wisp of sandalwood incense burned to ash. Taoist Zhang's calm voice announced time was up, startling all 4 of us from our deep breathing. I felt refreshed, clear-headed, years of chronic fatigue already lighter. I mirrored the others, adjusted my posture, and looked respectfully at our blue-robed instructor. Taoist Zhang stood and began checking each student's progress. Li Jinyuan first, impetuous and flighty. Breathing had gone ragged 3 times in the last quarter hour. Troubled by distracting thoughts, Li Jinyuan blushed and mumbled something about trivial family matters. Taoist Zhang gave a noncommittal nod. Next, Gu Qinghe. Not bad. Qi sensitivity had stabilized, faint current of qi around him. A few more days, and he might capture his first thread of spiritual qi. Gu Qinghe pressed his lips together, saluted, said nothing. Typical. I listened from the side, forming impressions. Li Jinyuan was the youngest son of landlord Li, a rich kid here more to boost family prestige than actually pursue cultivation. Gu Qinghe was also from a humble family, joined the inner sect over a month before me, making the fastest progress. Then Wang Xiaolu. Half a month in the inner sect, and still no qi sensitivity. His aptitude required much more refinement. Wang Xiaoyu's face fell hard. Finally, Taoist Zhang turned to me. First day? Seemingly wanting to make an example for the slow-witted Wang Xiaolu, he asked me to perform one cycle of the small qi gathering technique with the heart method. No need to be nervous. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes. The world went silent. Aided by my fate chart, I slipped into meditation instantly, no difficulty at all. My breathing fell into a rhythm that aligned with some profound principle. Neither rushed nor sluggish, every breath perfect. My hands formed the seal, mind sunk into my dantian. The energy introduction incantation flowing through my consciousness like I'd practiced it 1,000 times. Li Jinyuan let out a soft sound of surprise. With every breath I took, dust motes in calm heart hall began circling around me, caught in an invisible pull. Faint, but unmistakable. I was drawing in the surrounding qi. Guqinghe's eyes snapped open. He stared at my face, fingers tightening on his knees. It had taken him 20 full days of tedious meditation to barely achieve that kind of pull. Even Taoist Zhang's eyes flickered with surprise. He'd taught many students. Even decent ones fumbled on their first attempt, messing up the incantation, botching the breathing. My execution was smooth as flowing water. If he hadn't known I'd just paid my tuition that day, he'd have assumed I'd been practicing for 6 months. He waited until I completed a full small circulation, then nodded. Stop now. I ceased cultivation, opened my eyes. Asked if I'd made any mistakes. None. The way he looked at me now held a new gravity. I wasn't just some farm boy filling a quota anymore. He turned to all 4 students and said since I'd achieved qi sensitivity, he'd elaborate further today. Everyone perked up. Even Wang Xiaolu. Taoist Zhang held up a single finger with a faint light at the tip. Mortal martial arts trained flesh and bone. We who walked the path of cultivation trained with innate spiritual energy. Achieving qi sensitivity just meant I could perceive spiritual qi, like pushing open a door a crack. At this stage, the qi merely passed through my body. Like a draft, it came and went. The next step was transforming passive perception into active interception. And then he laid out a very specific benchmark. A person of average aptitude, upon first achieving qi sensitivity, could after 3 days of hard practice capture 1 thread of spiritual qi and store it in their dantian without it dissipating. 1 thread every 3 days. I committed it to memory. He confirmed it. Spiritual qi was formless and hard to measure, so the ancient sages devised the thread as a unit. Accumulate 100 threads, and they condensed into 1 strand. That single strand was the first great hurdle. Only by possessing a complete strand could I activate the most basic talismans and cast the simplest magic techniques, spiritual eye, light body, that sort of thing. Only then would I truly be in the qi cultivation first layer, qualified to test for a Taoist record at the Taoist school. I started calculating. 1 thread every 3 days, 100 threads to make a strand. That was 300 days, almost a whole year. And the Taoist school entrance exam was at most 6 months away. No wonder Master Lu described it as an army trying to cross a single plank bridge. Without talent or resources, just grinding slowly, most people wouldn't even make it to the starting line. Taoist Zhang softened his tone. That wasn't absolute. Nature's spiritual energy had different attributes. Find a place that resonated with your affinity, and you'd get twice the results. East Seashore had abundant water element qi. Cultivators who gathered a strand of it had vast, enduring reserves, great for drawn-out fights. Southern Border Volcano had volatile fire element, immense power. Here in Onping County, within the Great Zhou's Plain Array, the qi was filtered by the law net, neutral and placid. No special properties, but the most stable kind, hard to suffer deviation from. Perfect for building a foundation. He glanced at the sky and dismissed us. Don't bite off more than you could chew. When we went back, don't slack off. Cultivation was like rowing a boat upstream. Don't move forward, you fall behind. We bowed. Li Jinyuan shot me a long, meaningful glance before leaving without a word. Guqinghe paused as he walked past and muttered, "You're not bad." Then he vanished into the night too. I rubbed my nose, didn't pay their reactions much mind. Walking out the gate, the cool night breeze calmed my racing thoughts. 1 thread every 3 days was the standard for normal people. But I had my fate chart. As long as I trained, I'd make progress. No bottlenecks. If I trained twice as hard, could I manage 1 thread a day? Or even faster? Then my stomach let out a thunderous growl that shattered my heroic ambitions. I gave a wry smile, clutching my belly and quickening my pace. Cultivation was great and all, but it was expensive. I wasn't even an immortal yet, and I was already on the verge of starving. By the time I got home, even the village dogs had stopped barking. Pushing open the door, I saw a dim oil lamp still burning. My siblings were asleep, but my parents were still up. My mother put down her mending and stood. Saved me some food in the pot, still warm. My father looked up from his pipe with a simple, honest smile. I noticed his trouser legs covered in dried mud. He'd spent the whole day in the fields without a break. I sat down. My mother brought out a large bowl of coarse rice, stir-fried greens, and even a few pieces of pork crackling the size of fingernails. She asked how the intersect went. Was Taoist Zhang strict? Everything's fine, I said, shoveling food in. Master Zhang didn't talk much, but what he taught was the real deal. I could understand it and keep up. She smiled, wrinkles smoothing out. My father tapped out his pipe and said in a low voice that I shouldn't put too much pressure on myself. They'd talked it over. Just do my best. The 10 taels were spent, that was that. The family wouldn't fall apart over a bit of money. Then, a little awkwardly, he said if I didn't pass the Taoist school exam, don't lose heart. He'd heard from old Wang that you didn't have to be from a Taoist school to take the celestial examination in the future. Could practice at home a couple more years. Take it slow. I knew he was trying to comfort me, afraid I'd crack under pressure. But I also knew it was wishful thinking from a poor family. The Taoist schools catered to young students with government subsidies and systematic teachings. Going wild cultivator meant buying every single technique from the marketplace at a true fortune. Forget learning magic. Just the follow-up cultivation technique for realm breaking would bankrupt us 10 times over. I swallowed my food and looked up with a relaxed smile. Don't worry, Dad. This is just the beginning. My mother beamed. Our boy's been smart since he was little. I polished off the huge bowl and every last bit of pork crackling. Felt full, but the deep cellular hunger hadn't faded. My mother noticed the sparkling clean bowl. Normally my appetite was only slightly above average, but tonight I'd eaten 1.5 times my usual portion. I told her I was full, not wanting to eat the family's remaining grain. But she said she'd cook my rice dryer from now on. Couldn't have me ruining my health before finishing my studies. I nodded silently. Back in my cramped room, I didn't fall into bed. I sat cross-legged on the hard plank bed, quieted my mind, and assumed the cultivation posture. The night was deep and silent. After cultivating at school for a double hour during the day, my body was exhausted. The weakness from refining essence and transforming qi made me want nothing more than to sleep. A normal person forcing themselves at this point would scatter their mind, maybe even suffer qi deviation. But I had my panel. That one line, non-stop rushing, unceasing labor, solidified my drowsy will like magic. As long as I practiced, I'd make progress. Since my fate chart granted unceasing labor, I'd see just where this body's limits truly lay. The familiar rhythm began. Gritting my teeth against the aching soreness in my meridians, I guided the faint sensation of qi through my body, over and over. Once, twice, 5 times. Fine beads of sweat formed on my forehead and trickled down. Extreme fatigue. But I didn't stop. Every breath was like squeezing out my body's potential, drawing every last wisp of essence qi from the coarse food I'd eaten and converting it into faint spiritual power. At some point, a dull ache throbbed in my head, and my body screamed that continuing would cause harm. I stopped, let out a long, turbid breath. Felt like my skeleton was about to collapse. Couldn't lift a finger, but I summoned the panel immediately. Small qi gathering technique. Skilled, 2 out of 200. A genuine smile spread across my pale, weary face. It really went up. Just 1 point. Still far from the 3 days of 1 thread standard, but I ground it out while utterly exhausted with no spiritual food to replenish. That single point meant I'd stabilized my qi sensitivity and taken a solid step toward retaining spiritual qi. Then I couldn't hold on anymore. I tilted sideways and fell stiffly onto the bed. The instant my head hit the pillow, drowsiness washed over me like a tide. That night, I slept profoundly. 7 days passed like the blink of an eye. At the academy, the gap between students had become visibly apparent. In a corner of the outer sect lecture hall, I was particularly eye-catching. Eyes half closed, chest rising and falling methodically, each breath accompanied by a subtle whisper of wind. Calm, composed, steady as a rock. After a week of nearly masochistic training with the complete heart method, my progress had left everyone else in the dust. No external resources needed. Master Lu set down his ruler with a flicker of satisfaction. Today we wouldn't practice the breathing technique. Instead, he was going to show us what cultivation truly meant after Qi introduction. His expression turned solemn. He extended his withered right hand, palm up, and made a grasping motion in empty air. Rise. The air grew slightly humid. Then a fist-sized ball of water condensed from thin air above his palm. Crystal clear, refracting a rainbow halo in the sunlight, hovering and slowly rotating. The lecture hall erupted. Kids' eyes went wide with disbelief and excitement. This was an immortal technique. To a bunch of boys who'd only ever seen farmhand tricks, summoning water from nothing was a miracle. He flicked his wrist, and the water sphere flew out, landing precisely on a withered orchid on the windowsill, dissolving into fine mist that instantly drenched the plant. Then he called it the water control technique, one of the most basic 5-element skills. And as he looked at the revitalized orchid, the light in his own eyes dimmed, revealing a hint of bitterness. 30 years ago, Qingzhou had been plagued by relentless downpours. The Celestial Court's water department needed flood control specialists badly. 8 out of 10 candidates in his year had been grinding this very technique, hoping to get noticed during the Celestial examination and leap the Dragon Gate. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. His aptitude was poor, his technique too crude. He failed to stand out and ended up teaching at this academy with his worn-out body, making a humble living. The hall went silent. I understood perfectly. Fail the Celestial examination, and even with a magic technique, you'd never glimpse the higher realms. But even as a failed exam taker, having a magic technique meant a respected life in the county, never worrying about your next meal. Compared to farming, it was heaven and earth. That only strengthened my resolve. After class, I ran into Gu Qinghe in the covered walkway. Over the past week, since we were both from humble families with extra training in the inner sect, we developed a quiet rapport. He asked about my progress. I admitted I was fluent with the technique and could sense qi flowing through my meridians, but every time I tried to trap it in my dantian, it was like catching an eel, slippery and impossible to hold. My panel showed 5 out of 200. A whole week of grinding almost without sleep, and that's where I was. Gu Qinghe slowed his pace and shared his insight in a low voice. It was in the momentary pause between the exhale and the inhale. Not trying to grab it as you breathe in, but at the very end of the exhale, before inhaling again. For a split second, there was a vacuum in your dantian. That's when you focused your mind and willed the qi down from above. Only then could you lock it in place. A sharp glint flashed in my eyes. That was the detail I'd been overlooking. I thanked him sincerely. He waved it off. Neither of us had a powerful family. If we weren't diligent, how could we compete? At Calm Heart Hall, Taoist Zhang was already waiting. We sat. He waved us to begin. I mentally rehearsed Gu Qinghe's method first, then started. Inhale, spiritual qi trickled through my pores like a gentle stream. Exhale, turbid qi expelled, the spiritual qi growing restless, threatening to slip away. Then, in that empty moment between breaths, my spiritual power plunged downward like a strike. An invisible chime seemed to ring inside my dantian. That faint, slippery coolness that had been trying to escape was suddenly pinned by an invisible hand. It settled obediently at the bottom of my dantian qi si. Success. An extremely faint but real sensation of coolness. It no longer dissipated or drifted. It had truly become part of me. 2 hours later, Taoist Zhang walked over. His gaze lingered on my lower abdomen, and a flash of admiration crossed his eyes. Asked if I'd managed to trap it. I said I had, thanks to his guidance. He placed a hand on my shoulder to sense my condition and nodded. My aura was tranquil and balanced. This was attributeless qi, called pure qi, born of heaven and earth within the great Zhou's borders, where the law net purged evil qi. Lacked the ferocity of fire and the endurance of water, but its strength was perfect neutrality. All-embracing, the cleanest form of spiritual qi, compatible with all techniques. I could switch to any attribute later without conflict. He patted my shoulder. Now that I'd grasped qi, I'd truly reached the beginner stage. From here, It was the water grind, accumulating wisps into a thread. My panel flickered. Small chi gathering technique. Skilled, 6 out of 200. Sitting there with my first wisp of pure chi in my dantian, I noticed something on my panel. Beneath the fate chart column, a second line of text was materializing. Characters flickered like a candle in the wind, not yet stable. Nourishing and exquisite, rapid thinking. Unsettled. The note said it increased comprehension, accelerated cultivation speed, granted an exquisite aura, allowing efficient conversion of excess essence chi into cultivation base. My heart leaped. My guess had been right. The fate charts weren't set in stone. They evolved based on my actions and condition. To survive, I toiled in the fields day and night while studying at the school. That triggered the hard-working life chart, granting unceasing labor. Now, as a student who'd not only been diligent but captured spiritual chi in just 7 days, demonstrating talent beyond ordinary, a new chart was forming. In astrology terms, this corresponded to an outpouring of brilliance, more efficiently converting consumed energy and knowledge into cultivation base. Unceasing labor guaranteed no bottlenecks. This new one was like adding an engine to that cart. Once it settled, my cultivation efficiency would jump to another level. Even with scarce resources, I could rely on the high conversion rate to catch up to rich kids downing pills. Taoist Zhang's voice cut in. A wisp of chi in 7 days. Despite having the intersect heart method and no spiritual food or materials to support me, achieving this through pure hard work in 7 days was truly remarkable. Top-tier candidate level, even by previous year's standards. Guching has spoke up too. Frankly admitted it had taken him nearly half a month to capture his first wisp. My aptitude was greater than his. His honesty actually made me see him in a higher light. I told him without his breathing guidance, I'd have struggled for days more. Even Wang Xiaolu looked at me differently now, less casual, more awe and envy. In a world where strength was paramount, the moment you displayed potential, you weren't just a fellow student anymore. You were a fellow Taoist worth investing in. Class dismissed. Taoist Zhang told me not to get complacent. This first wisp was the most delicate. Nurture it well. After class, everyone filed out into the night. I was heading out of the city when a gentle voice called from behind. Brother Chu, please wait. Li Jinyuan came hurrying over. Had dismissed his servants, just a young page with a lantern trailing far behind. Said he admired my achievement. It was getting late. Our paths aligned. Why not walk together so he could ask about cultivation? Our paths aligned. I saw through it instantly. The Li mansion was in the prosperous West District. My home was 10 li away in the opposite direction. How could our paths align? The rich young master wanted to befriend me, but didn't want to seem obvious about it. I didn't expose the lie or fawn, just smiled. Since our paths align, I'd be glad for the company. He was surprised, then his smile deepened. We walked under the moonlit flagstones. He never mentioned his family or wealth. Instead, with great tact, he shared cultivation world tidbits. The chief examiner for this year's selection was the notoriously strict iron-faced magistrate Zhao, who valued practical combat and temperament. 100 Herbs Hall in the south had new spirit rice in. Just mention his name for a 20% discount. Every sentence packed with valuable information that someone isolated at the bottom of society like me would normally never access. I didn't say much, but when I spoke, I hit the key points. Neither ignorant nor prying. At the fork in the road, left to the wealthy inner city, right to the wilderness, I stopped. Even if you escort a friend 1,000 li, you must part. This was where our aligned paths ended. I gave him a knowing half-smile. He laughed, not embarrassed at all. Said he'd enjoyed the conversation so much he didn't realize we'd walked so far. See me at the Taoist school tomorrow. Walking home alone, I was in a good mood. This was the benefit of strength. It broke down class barriers, let people from different worlds connect. I felt the new fate chart flickering in my mind, seeming to stabilize a bit more. I needed to solidify it as soon as possible. When I got home, the house was silent. Several bowls overturned on the table covering a still warm meal. Parents already asleep. I'd insisted they stop waiting up for me since they had to be in the fields at dawn. I lifted the bowls. Brown rice piled high, stir-fried pickled vegetables with dried bamboo shoots. For the Chu family, a lavish feast. The hunger roaring in my belly left no room for manners. I wolfed it down. But as the food went down, the deep hollow feeling inside wasn't satisfied. Still not enough. My cells were still screaming for energy. The nourishing and exquisite fate chart was powerful. It efficiently converted ingested energy into cultivation potential, but it came with a huge side effect. Massive increase in consumption. Ordinary grains were full of impurities with little spiritual qi. No matter how much I ate, it couldn't fill the enormous deficit from cultivation. I needed meat every meal, or at least spirit rice and spiritual cuisine. For the current Chu family, that was a pipe dream. If I kept cultivating while constantly hungry, my progress would slow, maybe even deplete my qi and blood, damaging my foundation. I tapped my fingers on the table. Get money? I had qi sensitivity but hadn't reached the first layer. No magic, no talismans, couldn't even be a bouncer. The only way out was to race against time. The intersect tuition only covered 3 months. After that, if I hadn't broken through and wanted to continue, another 10 tails. I couldn't come up with that even selling my entire family. So I had to break through within 3 months. Once I was a true qi cultivation cultivator, even just the first layer, I could take on simple jobs, exorcisms, talisman drawing, even apply as a temporary government clerk. Making money would be much easier then. 1 wisp gained in 7 days was just the beginning. With my panel, even with poor food, if I ground hard enough, I could increase the speed. If I managed 1 wisp a day, I could form my qi in 100 days. Next afternoon at the academy, I was deep in breathing exercises when Master Lu's voice rang out at the entrance. Chu Bai, someone's here to see you. I opened my eyes in surprise. I was a loner at the academy. Besides the occasional word with Gu Qinghe, I had basically no social life. Who would be looking for me? At the gate stood a heavy-set, middle-aged woman in a floral dress, hands on hips, face caked in thick powder, impatiently fanning herself. My second aunt, Lu Clan. Fierce personality, notoriously tight-fisted, looked down on the Chu family for being poor. Despite being relatives, we rarely interacted. She'd never once visited me at the academy in 3 years, even though her family lived in the city nearby. A sudden visit could not be good news. She looked me up and down without a smile and got straight to it. Big nephew. She heard my father took 4 taels from her husband. I corrected her, it was a loan. Mother said we'd pay interest. A loan? She sneered, her voice jumping several octaves, drawing stares from everyone around. What was I going to repay it with? My life. That idiot's second uncle lent it behind her back. That was business capital. She'd been wondering why the books didn't add up. Then she found out he threw it into our family's bottomless pit. I kept my voice low. The money was for my tuition fee, not spent carelessly. I was already in the intersect with a good chance at the Taoist school. The Taoist school? She let out an exaggerated scoff. Me? Why didn't I take a piss and look at my reflection? Landlord Wang's son from the next street failed the exam 3 years straight. What made a mud-caked peasant like me think I could make it? She was getting more agitated, finger nearly poking my face. For taels of silver. If you threw it in water, you'd at least hear a splash. Giving it to me for tuition was like feeding meat buns to a dog, gone for good. Give the money back right now, or she'd go raise hell with my parents. The crowd was growing. Wealthy students pointing at me, faces full of mockery, enjoying the show. I stood there, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. But I didn't explode. Didn't shrink away either. Took a deep breath, looked her straight in the eye, and said calm and firm, the money was paid to the academy, couldn't be refunded. We acknowledged the debt and would repay it. But even if she caused a scene right now, we didn't have 4 taels in coins to hand over. She hadn't expected her usually quiet nephew to talk back. Powder was literally flaking off her face from the fury. Then a stern voice rang out. Who was causing a commotion? Master Lu emerged from the crowd with his disciplinary ruler. Students fell silent. Even Lu clans softened a bit. Teachers held prestige with ordinary people. He asked if there was something that couldn't be discussed civilly. She put on a pitiful face, started pleading her case. He cut her off. He was already aware of the matter. This child, Chu Bai, had good talent. A promising seedling for cultivation. Those 4 taels represented a fortuitous encounter, a chance to change destiny. He could personally guarantee I wouldn't be a common man. I'd certainly repay a mere 4 taels. Lu Clan pressed, but what if I failed the exam? If that day came, Master Lu would repay it himself. Flick of his sleeve. Final. She was speechless, knew when to quit, gave me a few more days, shot me a vicious glare, and walked away muttering about rotten luck and poor relatives. The crowd dispersed. I bowed deeply to Master Lu. He sighed. Don't let it bother me. That's just how the world was, cold and cynical. Then he said my family's situation was difficult. On the path of cultivation, the 4 pillars were wealth, companions, skill, and location. Wealth came first. He'd mention my situation to Taoist Zhang and see if he could find me a work-study job in the city. Even grinding herbs at an apothecary could earn cultivation resources. My head snapped up. That was exactly what I needed most. Back in the lecture hall, classmates looked at me with varied expressions, some sympathetic, others scornful. I paid them no mind. Walked to my cushion, sat down, closed my eyes. 3 breaths later, my breathing steadied and the airflow around me began circulating in rhythm. Heart like still water, not a single ripple. After the lecture, Li Jinyuan and Wang Xiaolu left first, leaving just Gu Qinghe and me to tidy up the meditation cushions. Then Taoist Zhang's voice stopped us. Stay for a moment. We stepped forward respectfully. He'd been sitting cross-legged under the tree with his eyes closed. Now he opened them, his gaze sweeping over our washed-out clothes and slightly gaunt cheeks. Master Lu's words still echoed in his ears, apparently. These 2 were the most talented prospects in this batch, and it would be a shame if cultivation got held back by worldly affairs. He got straight to the point. Master Lu had told him about our family situations. 4 essentials to cultivation: wealth, companionship, techniques, and location. Wealth came first, and that wasn't an empty saying. If we couldn't eat our fill, we wouldn't be cultivating immortality for long. Gu Qinghe and I exchanged a glance. I admitted it frankly. Yes, short on silver. Nothing to hide from Taoist Zhang. Gu Qinghe nodded. He'd considered an apothecary apprenticeship, but they turned him down for being too young. The only jobs available were hard labor, hauling sacks. Taoist Zhang happened to have something suitable. He pulled out a wooden token from his sleeve. The Zhao family in the south of the city was wealthy. One of their sons, past 18, had missed the ideal Taoist school window. Family had deep pockets, hired private tutors, hoping to force him through the celestial examination. He'd already reached the Qi cultivation first layer and was beginning offensive magic techniques. He needed a sparring partner. A sparring partner in name, but a spirit target in reality. When the young master practiced magic techniques like water bullet and fireball, he needed someone as a moving target to hone his aim. A mortal's reactions were too slow and they couldn't perceive spiritual Qi fluctuations, making them extremely easy to accidentally injure. But we too had Qi sensitivity, sharp senses, could perceive technique trajectories in advance to evade. Ideal candidates. Gu Qinghe's face fell at spirit target, basically human target practice. Taoist Zhang sensed the apprehension. Practice level magic with reduced power, protective gear provided. Minor injuries at worst unless you took a powerful hit head-on. Then he held up 3 fingers. One session lasted about 2 double hours. Pay was 300 cents. 300 cents. Gu Qinghe's breathing went ragged. In Anping County, a strong man hauling sacks at the docks all day earned maybe 30 cents. This was 10 times that. For just 2 double hours. My mind was racing. Twice a week on weekends, that was 600 cents a month. 2 tails and 4 maces. Enough to not just eat meat, but save up, maybe even cover the renewal fee in 3 months. And beyond the silver, during sessions, we'd observe up close how a true Qi cultivator mobilized spiritual Qi and formed hand seals. For students who hadn't learned any magic yet, that practical experience was worth more than money. My eyes lit up. With my panel and boosted comprehension, watching someone cast spells up close, even without verbal components, just observing movements and Qi flow, I might secretly learn a technique or 2. Maybe even grind new skill proficiency. We bowed almost in unison. Willing to go? What was a little physical pain? Poverty was the most terrifying disease in the world. Taoist Zhang handed me the token. Tomorrow was a rest day. Go to the Zhao mansion, find Steward Zhao, say he sent us. Remember, do the work, keep mouth shut, don't let it interfere with our own cultivation. Walking out the gate into the dark, both our steps were exceptionally light. Gu Qinghe clutched that token like a rare treasure, voice trembling. 300 cents. With this he could finally afford his mother's medicine. I smiled and patted his shoulder. I could finally improve my family's meals. But I told him to stay sharp at the Zhao mansion. Magic from a chi cultivator, even practice level, a direct hit would be a world of hurt. His eyes glinted wild. We crawled up from the mud. Might not have much, but we were tough. As long as it didn't kill us, it was a surefire win. Next morning I brought up the job at breakfast, keeping my tone light. An instructor from the school introduced me to a position. A family in the city needed a study companion for their young master, running errands, organizing books, that sort of thing. 300 cents per session. My father's chopsticks clattered onto the table. He thought he'd misheard. I smiled and reassured him. The work was easy, wouldn't interfere with cultivation, might even learn something. His face flushed with excitement. Always knew his son had promise. My mother frowned though. The pay was too high. Why would they pay so much for a simple study companion? Could there be danger? Mothers were always more perceptive. I reassured her. Taoist Zhang arranged it himself. He wouldn't lead me into a trap. They valued me as a scholar and inner-sect disciple. Payment for my status, not my strength. Hearing an immortal master had made the introduction, she relaxed. Still told me to be sharp at their mansion and not offend anyone important. After the meal, I changed into a clean short shirt my mother had made for New Year. Glanced back at our shabby courtyard. Thought about not mentioning second aunt hounding us for the debt. Those four tails were a sword over our heads, but also represented second uncle's kindness. Since I could bear the burden, no need to make my parents worry more. Hurrying into the city, I arrived at the affluent southern district. Wide clean streets, green willows, air somehow fresher. In front of a large red lacquered gate reading Zhao Mansion, I found Gu Qinghe by one of the stone lions, nervously clutching the hem of his clothes and craning his neck. First time at such a grand residence. Feeling out of his depth, I clapped him on the shoulder. We were earning this with our skills, not here to steal anything. Come on. We handed over Taoist Zhang's wooden token to the gatekeeper. No trouble, just a flat wait here. A side door opened, and a middle-aged man in martial attire stepped out. Stern face, sharp hawk-like gaze. The faint oppressive aura he gave off made my heart tighten. This was a real cultivator. He introduced himself as Wu Shang, young Master Zhao's instructor. Since fellow Taoist Zhang recommended us, he presumed we had some basic skills. Follow him. We passed through several deep courtyards to a secluded but spacious side courtyard. The moment we stepped through the gate, the acrid smell of scorched something hit us. The training ground was littered with blackened, shattered wooden posts and straw dummies. The ground was pockmarked with craters. Looked like a small battle had been fought there. In the center stood a young man about 18 or 19 in fine brocade robe, hands clasped behind his back, arrogant and impatient. Young Master Zhao shot us a sideways glance and snorted. These were the people Elder Zhang found. Nothing but skin and bones. Could they even take a hit? Wu Shang replied flatly that we had chi sensitivity, so our reflexes were naturally superior. Told us to wait to the side and observe his instruction. We retreated to the corner like a pair of wooden stakes. Wu Shang started instructing young Master Zhao. His last few firebomb techniques had smooth chi circulation, but his control at the instant of release was terrible. A magic technique wasn't something you just tossed out. It should be like a flying saber, hitting precisely where you aimed. Zhao Xing cut him off impatiently. Enough nonsense. He just needed it powerful. Who cared about accuracy? As long as it blew them to smithereens, job done. Wu Shang shook his head. Even the greatest power was useless if it missed. Pointed to a straw target 10 paces away. Told him to try again. Sink chi into Dantian. Let will guide the mind. Standing in the corner, I appeared subservient with my head down, but my entire focus was locked on the training ground. I watched Zhao Xing take a deep breath, hands quickly forming a spell. As he moved, I could clearly perceive fire element spiritual energy in the air converging on his palms like moths to a flame. So this was a magic technique. I couldn't hear the heart method mantra, but I could still trace the general path of spiritual chi flowing through his meridians. He barked go. A brilliant red light flared in his palm. A fist-sized crimson fireball shot forward with a roar, trailing scorching heat, streaked in a straight line, and slammed into the straw target. The target exploded. Straw fragments ignited midair before they could fall, showering down as sparks. The wooden post was a charred, broken stump billowing black smoke. Gu Qinghe swallowed hard. face turning deathly pale. The corner of my eye twitched. This was practice magic with reduced power? This was what they called a bit of physical suffering. If that thing hit someone, even in iron armor, their insides would shatter from the force, and then they'd be cooked to a crisp. We looked at each other, raw terror in both our eyes. 300 cents definitely wasn't easy money. Wu Shang slowly turned his head to look at us in the corner. Did we see clearly? He pointed to the charred wreckage. For the next double hour, we would be the straw targets. We were rooted to the spot. 300 cents was tempting, but you had to be alive to spend it. One blast from that firebomb, even if it didn't kill you, would take off a layer of skin. Wu Shang snorted. The Zhao mansion had deep pockets. Since they'd hired us, they'd take full responsibility. Medical expenses covered if anything went wrong. Zhao Xing was eager to test his new insight. His aim was better now, needed live targets for prediction practice. If we got hurt, beyond covering medical costs, the Zhao mansion would compensate each of us an extra 5 taels. 5 taels. Gu Qinghe's eyes went bloodshot. My heart skipped too. A hefty reward found a willing man. In a world where human life was treated like dirt, 5 taels could buy half a poor man's life. Gu Qinghe growled he was in. I nodded. Fortune was sought in danger. We'd come this far, no reason to back down. Wu Shang grabbed 2 round shields from a rack and tossed them to us. About the size of a manhole cover, thick beast hide coated in bluish-black mud. Bone-chillingly cold, faint fishy odor. Cold pool mud, specially designed to counter low-tier fire magic. Time the blocks right or dodge in time, we'd be safe. I swung the shield a few times. A little heavy, but for someone who'd spent years doing farm work, manageable. Zhao Xing stood about 10 paces away, hands already forming seals. His spiritual chi was limited, 7 or 8 shots this round. 1 shot every 15 breaths to give us time to breathe and dodge. Begin. We spread out. Zhao Xing yelled, take this. To the left. Firelight gathering in his hand, even having the kindness to announce the attack direction. But before the words were out, Wu Shang cut him off sharp. Shut up. Who told him to warn us? In a real battle, would the enemy tell you where they're striking? Focus completely. Aim for a direct hit. Scolded by the instructor, Zhao Xing channeled his resentment into the fireball in his hands. It shot toward me with a whistle. I was nervous but completely focused. The sliver of pure chi in my body circulated, heightening my 5 senses to their absolute peak. In my vision, the high-speed fireball wasn't untraceable. The surrounding heat waves and spiritual chi fluctuations were clearly visible. Lean left. Pure instinct. My feet shifted, body abruptly tilting. The searing heat grazed my collar and slammed into the wall behind me, blasting a patch black. I dodged it. Cold sweat on my forehead, but my eyes grew brighter. 15 breaths later, the second shot went at Gu Qinghe. His body technique wasn't as agile, but he made up for it with a fierce streak. Performed a clumsy, lazy donkey roll that looked pathetic, but let him narrowly avoid the blast. For the next few shots, Zhao Xing alternated between us. Wu Shang stood to the side, continuously offering pointers. Keep the wrist steadier. Predict positioning. Don't stare at the person, look where they're going to go next. While dodging, I multitasked, committing every pointer to memory. So that's how it worked. The moment a firebomb left the hand, its direction could be minutely adjusted with divine sense. Spiritual chi had to build up in the meridians for speed upon release. This real-time instruction from a master, even though it wasn't directed at me, was incredibly beneficial. My nourishing and exquisite fate chart seemed to grow faintly hot, frantically absorbing and converting all this new knowledge. After 7 or 8 shots, Zhao Xing's chi was depleted. He plopped down to meditate. Gu Qinghe and I were also exhausted, leaning against the wall gasping. Dancing on the edge of life and death was more draining than a full day of farm work. Gu Qinghe wiped soot from his face with a wry smile. This money was really hard to earn, but it was worth it. I had a sharp glint in my eyes, watching Zhao Xing doing breath regulation in the distance. After just those few shots, his aim was already much better than when he'd been shooting at straw targets. An hour later, Zhao Xing finished his recovery and stood up, full of vigor again. This time his gaze was noticeably sharper after Wu Shang's guidance and the live practice. And he seemed to have fixated on me, concentrating his entire barrage on me this round. First shot blocked my path left. Second predicted my move right. I dodged and wove, narrowly avoiding each, but realized he was intentionally herding me into a dead end. A little interesting. With my panel-enhanced body technique and perception far beyond ordinary, I could have easily broken out. But a new thought occurred. If I kept dodging every shot, where would young Master Zhao put his face? I was a training partner. The whole point was making sure he had a satisfying session. Since he wanted to practice prediction and containment, I'd play along. I pretended to slip, revealed an opening, let myself be forced into the corner. Zhao Xing's eyes lit up. Good chance. Let's see you run now. He unleashed the final firebomb he'd been charging. Unavoidable. Instead of dodging, I planted my feet in a horse stance, held the shield in front of my chest with both hands, and poured the faint trace of spiritual qi in my body into my arms. The crimson fireball slammed viciously into the beast-hide shield and exploded. Cold pool mud on the surface vaporized instantly into a great cloud of white steam. The impact traveled through the shield to my arms, making the webbing of my hands go numb. Felt like being hit by a savage bull. I stumbled back 5 or 6 steps before my back slammed against the wall. I emerged from the steam covered in dust and grime. Looked pathetic, but no real injuries. Zhao Xing pumped his fist. I hit him. The sense of accomplishment sent a thrill through him. Wu Shang, to the side, stroked his beard, his sharp eyes giving me a long, meaningful look. Others might not have noticed, but he had. Given my reaction speed from earlier, I'd had every opportunity to dodge. I'd intentionally let myself be forced into the corner to take that hit head-on, preserving Zhao Xing's pride and completing the task of practicing a block. This boy was a sharp one. His opinion of me rose a notch. He offered rare praise to Zhao Xing for improvement, then looked at me. I'd also done very well. Rest a moment. Prepare for the next round. As the setting sun bathed the courtyard in its final rays, the day's session finally ended. Zhao Xing plopped onto a stone bench, roughly wiping his face with a servant's towel, depleted but eyes shining with unprecedented excitement. Today's session was more effective than 3 days of practicing on wooden stakes by himself. Wu Shang lifted his teacup, a rare smile touching his lips. Our performance was decent. The coordination in later rounds let the young master make significant improvements in accuracy and prediction. A reward. Zhao Xing waved his hand magnanimously. A steward walked over with a tray, 6 neat strings of copper coins, each holding 100 cents on a red cord, giving off the alluring smell of money. 300 cents each. Gu Qinghe accepted his with both hands, fingers trembling with excitement. I was calmer, but the moment I took the money, I inwardly let out a long sigh of relief. First pot of gold I'd earned in this world. First step toward changing my fate. Zhao Xing waved us off. If he was free next week, come back then. We bowed and left the courtyard. The intangible sense of oppression didn't dissipate until we'd walked out of the Vermilion Gates. Gu Qinghe clutched his money pouch to his chest like he was afraid someone would snatch it, goofy grin on his face. 300 cents. Already figured out how to spend it. Mother's medicine first, then 2 pounds of good meat. I patted his shoulder. He definitely deserved to treat himself. After parting with him, I didn't rush to leave the city. Turned and ducked into Anping County's most bustling marketplace. With a small fortune tucked away, I walked through the crowd with more confidence than usual. I calculated silently. 300 cents. For an ordinary person, hard-earned money a strong laborer would toil from dawn to dusk 10 days to make. Old rice was 2 cents a pound, new rice 3, white flour 4. Regular pork over 20 cents a pound, fatty pork belly 30 or more. First, grain. I walked up to a grain shop. Instead of looking at the piled-up old rice like I usually did, I pointed to the gleaming new rice. 5 pounds of new rice, 5 pounds of white flour. 35 cents. Then the butcher. 2 pounds of pork belly, nice layers of fat and lean. 60 cents. On the way out, a pastry shop. Rich sweet aroma made me stop. Thought of little Manx back home. The poor girl had probably had proper pastries only a handful of times in her life. A bag of osmanthus cakes. 15 cents. Total spent, 110 out of 300. Left with 190. In the past, that 100-odd cents would have fed my family for half a month with tightened belts. Today, it was merely what I'd earned in 2 double hours of work. The gap between cultivators and mortals. I sighed, tucked the remaining money away, and started home laden with bags. Got home before sunset. Little Manx was squatting in the courtyard counting ants. Her eyes went wide when she saw what I was carrying. Scampered over like a little kitten catching the scent of a treat. I handed her the osmanthus cakes. She gingerly took the oil paper package, peeled back a corner to reveal glistening translucent cakes, giving off rich, sweet osmanthus fragrance. She gulped, but didn't eat one right away, cradled the package, and ran inside. Dad, Mom, Brother bought something delicious. When my parents saw the rice, flour, and that large slab of pork belly, they froze. My mother winced at the expense, but the joy in her eyes was impossible to hide. I told her I'd earned some money. Time the family ate a little better. Let's cook this meat tonight. Watching my mother's bustling, cheerful back and the grin that wouldn't leave my father's face, that shield bash today had been absolutely worth it. After dinner, back in my room. Body aching, but I didn't rest. Sat cross-legged, centered my mind. The day hadn't just been about earning money. It was a rare opportunity for cultivation. The image of Zhao Xing casting the firebomb replayed over and over in my mind. How the spiritual qi gathered in the palm, how it built power within the meridians, how it finally erupted from the fingertips. Comparing those details with the small qi gathering technique I cultivated, I had a moment of sudden clarity. The flow of qi didn't have to be so rigid. Pausing or accelerating it at certain nodes could produce a completely different effect. Inspired, I began circulating my technique. This time, the spiritual qi in my body seemed to circulate more smoothly than ever. The obscure resistance had lessened. If before it was like pushing a cart down a muddy path, now it was a gravel road. Not a paved highway yet, but significantly faster. One full circulation. I opened my eyes and summoned my panel. Small qi gathering technique. Skilled, 7 out of 200. Only a single point, but I could clearly feel a subtle change in absorption efficiency. This was the snowball effect. The more I practiced, the more skilled I became. The more skilled, the faster I improved. At this rate, absorbing one strand of spiritual qi a day, maybe even two, wouldn't be a distant dream. That evening at dinner, the atmosphere was lively, but with a subtle restraint. A large bowl of braised pork sat in the center, glistening gravy coating the perfectly marbled cuts. Under the dim oil lamp, it looked like the most exquisite delicacy in the world. But aside from the pieces my mother piled in my bowl, everyone else's chopsticks steered clear of the pork, only picking at vegetables. Even little Manx, who usually had the biggest appetite, merely gulped and kept her eyes glued to the meat, meekly shoveling down rice. I understood instantly. My parents must have instructed everyone beforehand. The meat was meant for the family's pillar. No one else was to waste it. I slapped my chopsticks on the table. Not loud, but it made my mother's hand tremble. The meat was delicious, I said, looking at them all seriously. But if I was the only one eating it, it lost all its flavor. I could earn money now. From now on, our family wouldn't go without meat. If they didn't eat, neither would I. Pushed my bowl aside, folded my arms. My parents exchanged a glance, eyes welling up. My father took a deep breath and put a piece of meat in Little Manx's bowl. Listen to your big brother. Everyone eat. Little Manx cried out in delight, finally taking a bite. Only then did I pick up my bowl again. As I swallowed piece after piece of rich, fatty pork belly, the long-missed savory, oily flavor exploded in my mouth. At the same time, my nourishing and exquisite fate chart seemed to activate, churning wildly. Waves of warmth spread from my stomach throughout my limbs. My meridians, slightly depleted from cultivation, greedily absorbed this energy like parched earth soaking up rain. Energy truly was the foundation of cultivation. This was just ordinary pork. If I had legendary spirit rice and meal, I couldn't imagine how much faster my cultivation would be. After dinner, I tried giving my mother the remaining 201. She pushed it back firmly. Our family might be poor, but as long as her and my father worked hard, we'd have enough. The debt could wait until after the autumn harvest. This was money from the opportunity for cultivation that I'd risked my life for. It had to be spent where it counted most. Whether buying medicinal herbs or future academy expenses, how could I manage without money on hand? My father chimed in. Just focus on cultivation. They'd take care of things at home. I didn't insist. Took the money back quietly. The only way to repay the weight of their love was to cultivate faster and make a name for myself as soon as possible. Then the month passed. I kept going to the Zhao mansion every weekend. My sparring improved. I could now handle attacks with composure, my shield deflection honed to perfection. My once slender frame showed faint outlines of lean muscle from the high-intensity training and steady meat supply. Wushang noticed. At first he'd assumed we were just freeloaders who got the job through Taoist Zhang's connection. But we'd never been late or left early. Even with cuts and bruises, not a single complaint. Especially me, my calmness under danger and ability to learn in the heat of battle made even a veteran cultivator take notice. What really caught his attention was that Taoist Zhang had sent a message specifically asking about us. For someone from the Taoist school to show that concern meant we, especially I, were likely destined for greater things. One afternoon after a month of sparring, Zhao Xing fired a crimson fireball at my face, much faster than a month ago, angle far more cunning, cutting off dodge room left and right. But I didn't panic. Planted my feet, lowered my center of gravity, and at the exact moment of impact, angled my round shield slightly and thrust it forward. The fireball shattered, but most of the impact deflected along the angled surface. My upper body merely swayed, didn't move half a step back. Zhao Xing couldn't help but cry out in approval. The more skilled his sparring partner, the more satisfying the training. His casting interval had shortened from 15 breaths to 13, accuracy improved by leaps. But what surprised him was that I was improving even faster. At first I'd been rolling on the ground to dodge. Now I handled attacks with composure. Wushang clapped his hands to end the session. His gaze swept over me with an almost imperceptible flash of approval. Then he called out as I was leaving. Chu Bai, wait. Taoist Zhang had sent a message. Wanted me to go directly to the Academy's Calm Heart Hall after leaving the Zhao mansion. Something important. My heart stirred. Today wasn't a day for intersect study. Why would Master Zhang summon me privately? I bowed respectfully and quickly departed from the Zhao mansion. Taoist Zhang's mansion was in the eastern part of Anping County, a quiet residential area lacking the overwhelming opulence of the southern district, but possessing an elegant serenity. Scholars, refined gentlemen, respected clerks. His gate had a black lacquered door with a plaque reading Zhang Mansion. Door knockers unadorned, simple antiquity. A young Taoist acolyte led me through the threshold, and my eyes widened. The courtyard was exquisitely planned, rockeries and streams artfully arranged to conform to a specific feng shui pattern. The air was much fresher than outside, a faint pleasant sensation with each breath causing dormant spiritual qi in my body to stir restlessly. A true cultivator's residence. There were traces of a spirit-gathering array. Just as I thought, wealth, companions, skills, and location. That last one, location, was no small matter. If you could cultivate here long-term, even a pig would achieve enlightenment. We passed through winding corridors to a quiet room in the rear courtyard. Taoist Zhang sat cross-legged on a daybed, a large scroll with the character for Dao behind him, watching me with a smile. After the formalities, he got to the point. Wushang had told him everything about my time at the Zhao mansion. Tough-minded, calm under pressure, excellent comprehension, able to learn and adapt quickly in real combat. High praise, especially from that arrogant instructor Wu. I gave the humble response. He waved it off. The opportunity was given to me. Seizing it was my own skill. He'd called me here not just to chat, but to see how much progress I'd made. Told me to perform the small qi gathering technique once. Don't hold anything back. I took a deep breath, cleared my mind, entered meditation. My panel showed 67 out of 200. As the technique circulated, the aura around me changed abruptly. If a month ago my pull on spiritual qi was like a gentle breeze, now it was a trickling stream, continuous and extremely stable. The qi in the meditation chamber responded to the call, surging joyfully toward me. Taoist Zhang's eyes snapped wide open. He was inwardly shocked. I'd accumulated no less than 10 threads of spiritual qi, and my absorption rate, a thread every 2 or 3 days. For a disciple of ordinary aptitude, the standard was 3 days per thread, and most couldn't even reach that. Yet I, a lower-class youth with no family backing who earned resources by being a sparring partner, had reached this level in just 1 month. This wasn't mere diligence. This was exceptional inborn talent. After the incense burned down, I withdrew my energy and looked at him apprehensively. Good, good, good. He said it 3 times, unable to conceal the broad smile. He truly hadn't been wrong about me. At my current rate, forget being the best among this batch of intersect students. Even in all of Onping County, my talent was exceptionally rare. He'd dare say I was the only one in this group with a chance of breaking through to Chi Cultivation first layer before the Taoist school selection in 6 months. Then his expression grew serious. Chu Bai, although I call him Master Zhang at the academy, that was just a nominal instructor-student relationship, not a true master-disciple lineage. He'd called me here to ask a single question. Was I willing to enter his tutelage and become his inner disciple? Inner disciple. My heart pounded. In this world, the relationship between master and disciple wasn't like teacher and student. It was a close bond, like father and son. Once you took a master, you prospered together and fell together. A master taught everything he knew, provided resources and techniques, paved the way in the cultivation realm, and even officialdom. Taoist Zhang was from the Taoist school, with deep roots and connections in Onping County. For someone with no background like me, becoming his disciple was latching onto an incredibly powerful backer. I didn't hesitate. Dropped to my knees, kowtowed 3 times. I was willing. Master, please accept my obeisance. He accepted the ceremony, helped me to my feet. The look in his eyes had changed from scrutiny to the affectionate gaze one gives their own junior. Now that I was officially his disciple, there were things I should know. Taoist Zhang led me to a tea table and personally poured me a cup of spirit tea. In his life, he'd taught countless students and had an unknowable number of nominal disciples. But true inner disciples who'd performed the ceremony, only 5 before me. Only 5? I was surprised. He must have been extremely selective. Quality over quantity, he said with a faint smile. My 5 senior brothers and sisters had all passed the Taoist school selection with bright futures. His eldest senior brother had not only passed, but had his name placed on the golden list in last year's celestial examination. Now held a position in the Qingzhou Water Department as a true regular 9th grade immortal official. Qingzhou Water Department. Regular 9th grade. I sucked in a sharp breath. In a world where all pursuits were considered base and only officialdom was held high, the regular 9th grade might have been just the beginning, but for countless people it was the finish line they could only dream of crossing. True cultivators, on the imperial payroll, sheltered by the celestial court's destiny, lifespans reaching 200 years. I was old 6th, his current closed-door disciple. See that I didn't dishonor the sect's name. Then the gifts. A palm-sized blackwood token with gold-trimmed edges, calm heart, engraved on the front, intricate cloud pattern on the back. His personal token. Here in Onping County, it was as good as his presence. If I ran into trouble with common thugs, showing this would prove useful. Next, a cyan long shirt woven with spiritual silkworm silk. Warm in winter, cool in summer, repelled dust and dirt, extremely resilient. Ordinary swords and blades could hardly damage it. Not quite an entry-level Dharma artifact, but far beyond normal clothing. Finally, a lustrous jade ring. The calm heart jade ring. Worn on the person, it calmed the heart and pacified the qi, reducing stray thoughts. Essential at my critical juncture of accumulating spiritual qi. Every single item thoughtfully chosen for a new disciple like me. Extremely practical. I bowed deep with gratitude. One more thing. Now that I was an inner disciple, the Academy's intersect tuition fee was waived. I could come find him with cultivation questions anytime. No longer bound by the lecture schedule. Tuition waived. 10 taels of silver. That great stone weighing on my parents' hearts. Lifted with a single sentence. Master's great kindness, I said. I'd engrave it on my heart. Walking out of the Zhang mansion, I still felt like I was floating. Clutched the token and jade ring in my robes. Their solid feel making me want to throw my head back and roar at the sky. I went to the market, bought a plump old hen, and hurried home. Arrived just as cooking smoke was rising. Shouted the great news the moment I entered the courtyard. Taoist Zhang had accepted me as his disciple. A true inner disciple. My father's dry pipe fell to the ground with a clatter. Eyes wide, hands trembling. That godlike Taoist Zhang had taken me as his disciple? I recounted everything. The ceremony, the waived tuition, all of it. Dead silence. Then my mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Tears of pure joy. My father's eyes reddened too. He stroked the extraordinary fabric of the long shirt with a trembling hand. Wonderful. We didn't have to pay the 10 taels. Our family's fortunes had finally turned around. That night's dinner was even more jubilant than the last meat feast. The old hen stewed until tender, rich aroma filling the air. I ate until completely full, partly for celebration, mostly for cultivation. After dinner, by moonlight through the window, I fastened the calm heart jade ring to my waist. A faint cool sensation spread from my waist. My agitated mind calmed instantly, becoming still as water. What a treasure! I sat cross-legged and began circulating the small chi gathering technique. The old hen in my stomach transformed into a surging torrent of heat, rapidly broken down and absorbed. Previously, only 30 to 40% of food energy converted to essence chi. This time, my body greedily absorbed it with the ferocity of a whale swallowing the sea, conversion rate frighteningly high. The spiritual chi circulation path, once somewhat obscure, was now crystal clear. My panel vibrated. The fate chart text that had been flickering finally solidified, emitting a faint golden glow. Nourishing and exquisite, rapid thinking, activated. The note said it greatly enhanced comprehension, efficiently converted ingested energy into cultivation, and increased cultivation speed by 50%. It worked. I circulated my chi for another cycle. From just a single meal, the small chi gathering technique's progress had jumped by 2 whole points. This terrifying visible increase in speed made me clench my fists. Tuition waived. A path to wealth. A renowned master. And my chi ability had leveled up. I gazed at the bright moon outside my window, a feral glint in my eyes. Next up, full-speed sprint. I'd show everyone what a true genius really was. Next morning, before dawn, I shouldered my hoe and went to the fields. Even with income from the training partner job and being a famous master's disciple, the farm chores still had to be done. Not just to lighten my parents' load, it was also a way to temper my character. After a double hour of work, sun high in the sky, I called to my father that I was taking a break to cultivate. He waved me on with a good-natured smile. I found a quiet spot by the fields and sat cross-legged. As I activated the small chi gathering technique, spiritual chi was drawn to me again. But this time, the sensation was completely different. After the nourishing and exquisite fate chart fully took shape, my 5 senses had taken a quantum leap. If before it was catching fish in muddy water with bare hands, now the water was crystal clear. A sliver every 2 days. I gauged the rate of increase in my dantian and calculated. At this rate, in half a year I'd accumulate 100 slivers, condense them into a complete strand, and enter chi cultivation first layer. More diligent, ate better, could shorten it even further. Then I felt something odd. Within the flow of peaceful pure chi, a different kind of fluctuation. Incredibly faint, my former self would have missed it entirely. But to my heightened senses now, it was glaringly obvious. More active than pure chi, carrying a cool dampness, extremely pervasive, as if it could seep through anything. Spiritual chi with a special attribute. Curious, I followed the source, slowly rising and heading north. Through dense reed thickets, the view opened up. A wide river sprawled before me, waters surging eastward with a dull roar. Morning mist hung over the surface like gauze. The Sama River, notoriously treacherous. Village elders said the depths held sentient fish demon water monsters. Some claimed to have seen the river god's eerie wedding sedan on foggy days. Fishermen only dared cast nets in the shallows. Standing on the marshy bank, I took a deep breath and activated my technique again. The sensation was more than 10 times stronger. Mixed in with the pure chi were countless faint blue specks of light. As I breathed, they danced joyfully, even burrowing into my pores on their own. Water attribute spiritual chi. Taoist Zhang's lessons surfaced. Nature's spiritual energy had various attributes. For a chi-introducing stage cultivator, the very first strand they absorbed was the most critical. It determined their future foundation and path. Pure chi was all-embracing and compatible with any skill, the path chosen by 99% of cultivators in the Great Zhou. Special attribute energy was hard to find and carried great risk, but absorbing a specific attribute meant specialization. Water magic techniques fueled by water spiritual chi were at least 30% more powerful than with pure chi, consumed less energy, recovered faster. The drawback was fatal though. once meridians assimilated the water attribute. Switching to fire later would sever meridians at best, explode the body at worst. Unless you dispersed your cultivation and started over, you were stuck for life. My first wisp was already pure chi. Theoretically, since pure chi was compatible with any skill, could I absorb water spiritual chi on top of my existing foundation? I'd have the stability of pure chi plus some water element power. And the spiritual energy density here was clearly much higher than the field's. But I suppressed the impulse. Too risky. I was just a beginner, knew nothing about attribute conflicts. If these two types of chi clashed inside me and blew up my dantian, too late for regrets. The path of cultivation was like walking on thin ice. I dispersed the water vapor at my fingertip, gazed at the ceaselessly flowing river with awe. Whether the legendary water monster or this tempting yet dangerous water spiritual chi, neither were things my current self could afford to meddle with. Still, this place was a treasure trove. I memorized the location. When my cultivation progressed, or after consulting Master, I'd come back and investigate properly. I hurried to the academy, late for morning reading. Master Lu just gave a slight nod, more lenient with his star pupil who was now an inner disciple. During the break, I asked for half a day's leave. Personal matters. He smiled warmly, told me not to stress about schoolwork, just don't neglect character. Instead of going to the Zhang mansion, I turned into the largest tea house in the marketplace. Becoming a disciple had been too rushed the day before. I felt I'd been lacking in proper etiquette. Bought half a pound of the best cloud mist green tea. A full tael of silver, nearly half a month's income from the training partner job. But compared to the 10 taels Master had waved, it was a drop in the bucket. And I couldn't skimp on a gesture like this. Picked up a few delicate pastries too, then headed to the Zhang mansion. The servant boy at the gate spotted me from afar, hurried over with an even more enthusiastic attitude than last time. I was the Master's inner disciple now, status worlds apart. I tossed him a few copper coins and walked in. Taoist Zhang was reading an ancient tome. Glanced at the tea box, a smile touched his lips. Didn't I just pay my respects yesterday? Why spend money again? I said yesterday was too rushed. This disciple failed to prepare a humble gift. He nodded. Very thoughtful. It wasn't the tea he valued, it was my character. Even in hardship, I understood respecting my master. Once seated, he asked if I'd run into cultivation difficulty. I got serious and recounted everything. The discovery on the field ridges that morning, sensing water spiritual chi at the Samu riverbank. Asked my question directly. Since I'd drawn pure chi into my body, could I also cultivate water attribute spiritual chi? Would they conflict and damage my foundation? A flash of surprise in his eyes. I'd actually pinpointed water spiritual chi fluctuations in such a mixed environment? His estimation of my talent rose even higher. The Samu riverbanks were filled with water vapor and mixed chi. An ordinary early-stage cultivator might not distinguish it clearly, let alone someone who hadn't even officially begun chi cultivation. As for my concern, I was worrying needlessly. Not only possible, but highly beneficial. The greatest characteristic of pure chi was its neutrality and harmony, like a blank sheet of paper. Attributeless, therefore not rejecting any other attribute. He demonstrated. A ball of faint white light at his fingertip, then a tinge of blue slowly emerging within it. Absorbing water spiritual chi on a pure chi foundation was like painting on a blank sheet. As long as I didn't let the water chi overwhelm pure chi's dominant position, no conflict. Moreover, the lands of Qingzhou were crisscrossed with waterways. Anping County was built right next to a river. Cultivating water techniques here was a blessing from heaven. Water chi abundant, resources easy to find. Whether seeking official status in the Qingzhou Water Department or a local job driving away fish or managing waters, water technique would be the foundation for making a living. My eldest senior brother had taken this very path and was thriving. I nodded repeatedly, worries vanishing. Then he held on. His smile vanished, expression grave. Opportunity was often accompanied by risk. Since I intended to cultivate in the wild, there was something I had to know. Evil chi. My heart tensed. The Great Zhou Celestial Court had established a law net grand array in every county. It suppressed demons and filtered impurities. Spiritual chi inside the city was clean and gentle. But in the wild, the chi was denser and more active, mixed with evil chi that roamed the world. Especially the Sanmu River, Spirit monsters hid in its depths, evil chi even thicker than elsewhere. Carelessly inhaling it. Mild case, meridians felt stabbed, became irritable. Severe case, cultivation deviation, or mutating into a half-human, half-demon monster. Cold sweat on my brow. I'd only thought of it as a treasure spot, never imagining the hidden danger. He pulled a thin booklet from the bookshelf. A simple filtering technique. When cultivating in the wild, don't be greedy for speed. After each breath of spiritual chi, use this technique to filter it in the meridians, purging the murky, evil chi before drawing it into the dantian. Slower this way, but on the path of cultivation, stability was paramount. Never ruin the foundation for a little speed. I accepted the booklet with both hands and bowed solemnly. I'd rather be slow than greedy for quick progress. Leaving the Zhang mansion, midday sun glaring, bluestone path hot to the touch. I stood on a street corner thinking. I'd taken leave from the academy and explained things to Master. Legitimate reason to miss the afternoon intersect study. Rather than waste time, I should strike while the iron was hot and check out the riverbank now. Left the city gates, picked a direction, and broke into a sprint. In the past, running 10 li would have half killed me. But after more than a month of meat-rich diet and beating training, my physique was on a completely different level. My leg muscles powered me forward, wind whipping at my feet. Nearly a full double hour of running without stopping, only slowing when the rushing Sanmu River came into view. Wiped away a thin layer of sweat, felt my steady heartbeat. Not tired at all. In fact, felt like the chi and blood throughout my body had been stretched out. Exhilarating. The midday river was a different sight from the morning. Harsh sun high, wide water surface glittering gold. The hazy mist had dissipated, and with it, the active water's spiritual chi had grown much lazier. The special pocket of water chi hadn't vanished. It had retreated deeper, no longer pulsing as joyfully as the morning. Environment had a huge impact on spiritual chi. Without the timely morning fog plus my heightened perception, I'd have missed this treasure spot entirely. Daylight was actually an advantage though. Clear view, greater sense of security for someone cultivating in the wild for the first time. I found a secluded sandbar concealed by dense reeds, terrain slightly elevated, near the water but not easily spotted. Confirmed no one around, sat cross-legged. First, just draw a single sliver. Deep breath. Didn't circulate the technique immediately. Visualized the chi filtering technique first. A slight stirring of my mind. An invisible sieve opening at the entrance to my meridians. Then I carefully extended my divine sense to guide the wisp of faint blue energy drifting over the water. A faint cool sensation drilled through my pores. Completely different from the heavy stable feeling of pure chi. This water spiritual chi was like a slippery little fish, swimming about joyfully the moment it entered my body. But passing through the filtering sieve, I clearly felt a trace of gray-black impurity being forcefully intercepted, transforming into hot, turbid air expelled from my body. So this was evil chi. My heart trembled. Without Master's guidance, letting that accumulate would have led to huge problems eventually. After purging, the pure water spiritual chi flowed along my meridians and merged into my dantian. The ball of calm pure chi trembled slightly, then accepted the newcomer. No clash. Like a drop of blue ink falling into clear water, rapidly blending. The colorless vortex of chi now had a faint, ethereal blue tinge. An unprecedented feeling of nourishment filled my entire body, like a clear spring flowing through a dry riverbed. Even my meridians seemed more resilient. This felt incredible, and the sensation sparked a flash of inspiration. I recalled a passage from the Academy's Miscellaneous Studies class on the Qingzhou Chronicles. The Qingzhou water systems were numerous, types of spiritual qi complex. Cold nether qi from deep pools, bone-chillingly cold. Boiling fire soup from hot springs, unbearably scalding. And this type, found along banks of great rivers, elusive, gentle in nature, possessing purifying properties. It was purifying spirit flow. My eyes snapped open with joyous surprise. Not a world-shaking treasure, but for a cultivator, it had the miraculous effect of nourishing meridians and increasing spiritual chi purity. Even someone not cultivating water techniques could build a more solid foundation and reduce deviation risk from long-term absorption. I'd lucked out. This kind of ownerless, relatively stable spiritual flow might not be much to large sects, but in a small place like Onping County, it was absolutely scarce. I suppressed my excitement and began greedily absorbing. Sliver after sliver of purifying spirit flow filtered, purified, absorbed. The reserves in my dantian grew at a visible rate. Eventually, a faint swelling in my meridians told me to stop. Even though I'd only absorbed a little, the quality was absolutely superior to what I usually gathered. With this treasure spot, plus my new fate chart, my confidence in breaking through to chi cultivation had grown even greater. I was about to leave when my gaze paused on the water's surface nearby. The previously calm water seemed to shift unnaturally, sending out an extremely faint ripple, like something underwater had been disturbed. I stared but found nothing, just river water flowing eastward. My imagination? A big fish? A threat of vigilance rose. The Samu River was an evil land. I'd have to be even more careful when cultivating here in the future. I lingered no longer, passed through the reeds, and disappeared at the edge of the fields. Time passed like a white steed glimpsed through a crack in a door. Another month slipped away. Taoist Zheng's calm voice stopped our practice. For disciples exhaled long breaths of turbid air, foreheads beaded with sweat, eyes shining with excitement. Over the past month, everyone's progress was plain. Li Jinyuan and Wang Xiaolu had finally crossed the threshold of qi sensing, each accumulating their first wisp or two of spiritual qi. Faint as a candle flickering in wind, but they'd officially stepped through the gates of cultivation. Taoist Zhang critiqued each one. Li Jinyuan, progress but too impatient, qi in meridians like rootless duckweed instead of a gentle stream. Haste makes waste. Li Jinyuan, flushed with shame, bowed, promised to correct. Wang Xiaolu, average aptitude but simple honest nature, needed to refine his perception of spiritual qi. Practice the calm heart spell more. Guqing got approval. Aura stable and solid. 16 wisps accumulated over the month. Wouldn't make this year's Taoist school trial, but might have a shot at next year's celestial examination if he kept working. Then all eyes drifted to the green-robed youth in the corner. Pure envy, and even a hint of despair. Taoist Zhang looked at me with unconcealed pride. 27 wisps of spiritual qi. This month I'd accumulated another 17. 27 wisps. Even Li Jinyuan gasped. That averaged to a wisp in less than 2 days. Unheard of speed. While they patted themselves for gathering one wisp every 3 to 8 days, I'd left them so far ahead they could barely see my silhouette. I gave the humble response. All thanks to Master's guidance and decent luck recently. I knew better. Besides the high-efficiency conversion from nourishing and exquisite turning every bite of meat into pure energy, it was the purifying spirit flow from the Samu riverbank. That high-quality water attribute energy not only filled my dantian, but was subtly nourishing my meridians and physique, improving my aptitude bit by bit. Like swapping ordinary horses for thousand-li steeds. I summoned my panel. Name, Chu Bai. Realm, Qi Introduction, 27 out of 100. 2 Fate charts active. Small Qi gathering technique. Skilled, 135 out of 200. The Taoist school selection was at most 4 months away. At 1 wisp every 2 days. Gathering 100 wisps before the selection wasn't a problem. But that was far from enough. The selection tested practical combat techniques too. If I barely broke through with a reservoir of qi but no offensive magic, I'd be a living target who only knew how to meditate. And this year's chief examiner was Iron Face Magistrate Zhao. High realm with no practical skills was a surefire fail. I had to be faster. Leave at least a month for an offensive technique and actual combat practice. And my small qi gathering technique was approaching the next breakthrough, 135 out of 200. Based on how the panel worked, a skill breakthrough usually brought a qualitative change. When that happened, my cultivation speed would have another explosive increase. I also thought about the Samu River. Cultivating in the reeds had been effective, but I was greatly affected by weather and environment. As my perception of the purifying spirit flow grew sharper, I had a faint feeling the qi in the center of the river was even denser, might even have some kind of source. If only I had a boat to go deeper. After class, I headed straight for the ferry crossing outside the city. Sunset, golden red afterglow spilling across the water. A few worn fishing boats bobbed at the dock. A dark-skinned old fisherman sat at the bow, puffing his long-stemmed pipe. I asked to rent a boat. He squinted at me through the smoke, a refined scholar in a cyan long robe. Couldn't help but feel surprised. Why rent at this hour? Getting dark. The river scenery was nice, but not exactly safe, especially at night. Got real spooky. I enjoyed the night scenery, wanted to compose poetry, maybe catch a few fresh fish. Handed him 30 cents to rent his small sampan for a few days. Wouldn't go into deep water, just cruise the reed marshes. His cloudy eyes brightened at the money. 30 cents was no small sum. He agreed with a warning. If I encountered anything strange or heard odd noises, don't get curious. Just make a run for shore. I untied the rope, hopped on, and pushed off. As night fell, a light mist rose from the river, blurring the moonlight. All around silent except for the splash of oars and the occasional frog croak. Contrary to what I'd told the old man, I didn't linger in the reed marshes. I followed the current toward the river cove with the densest spiritual chi. About a double hour later, reached the center. Current gentle, cove surrounded by tall reeds, extremely secluded. The moment I stopped the boat, I could feel the surrounding air was so humid it felt like water could drip from it. Compared to the shore, spiritual energy density was at least 30% higher. The purifying spirit flow was extremely active, seeping into my pores without conscious effort. Delighted, put away the oars, sat cross-legged at the bow. As the small boat bobbed, I adjusted my breathing and entered meditation. The keen perception from nourishing and exquisite let me capture every wisp of spiritual chi's flow. Cool, pure water chi surged through my meridians into my dantian, merging with the pure chi. The pleasant sensation almost made me moan aloud. If I could cultivate here every night, progress wouldn't be slow even without meat. Tonight I should accumulate at least half a wisp more. The night deepened, mist grew thicker, nearly enveloping the boat completely. Then, in the middle of cultivation, a sudden inexplicable alarm welled up without warning. My eyes snapped open. The new fate chart had given me not just faster cultivation, but extremely keen awareness of surroundings. Right now, I sensed a profoundly dangerous presence approaching. Beneath the once calm surface, an extremely subtle undercurrent was surging rapidly. Unlike a natural current, this had a strong sense of purpose. Some colossal creature rapidly ascending from the deep, heading straight for my little boat. Something's coming up. My heart tightened, stopped cultivating, instinctively reached for the oar. Almost at that exact moment, the calm water near the boat exploded. A deep muffled boom like a heavy hammer striking a drum. A violent impact struck the bottom. The entire vessel was thrown up, tilting sharply, nearly capsizing. Incredible strength. I clung to the gunwale, used the solid footwork from sparring at the Zhao mansion to plant my legs like roots. Body swayed violently, but I forced myself stable. By hazy moonlight, I got a clear look. A monstrous fish at least half the size of a man leaped from the water. Blue-black scales like iron armor, glinting coldly. Dorsal fin sharp as a razor. Gaping maw filled with serrated fangs. Eyes glowing with faint green light. Full of bloodthirsty ferocity and heart-stopping evil chi. A river demon that became a spirit monster? The legends were true. There really were spirit monsters in this river. It was trying to capsize the boat. Smart predator. In the water, it was the apex. Knock me in, and it was hopeless. I roared, no longer caring about cultivation or chi. Only one thought. Escape, get to shore. Snatched the oar and paddled desperately. Arm muscles bulged, veins popping. Explosive power from nourishing and exquisite push to its absolute limit. Swung that hardwood or so fast it was almost a blur, each stroke kicking up huge spray, propelling the boat towards shore like an arrow. The monster fish didn't give up. Agile as a phantom in the water, it flicked its tail and charged again, ramming viciously into the side of the boat. The boat shook violently, groaning like it would fall apart. Each impact made my heart skip a beat, immense force traveling up through the hull, making my arms go numb. A race between life and death. The fish was incredibly fast in the water, but the boat wasn't too far from shore. Combined with my astonishing explosive strength, I reached the shallows despite repeated rammings. Looking at the reed marsh, just a stone's throw away, a ruthless glint flashed in my eyes. Carried by final momentum, The boat shot onto the muddy shallows, hull scraping against sand and gravel with a piercing shriek before running aground. I grabbed the oar, prepared to jump. But the monster fish, eyes red with bloodlust, had no intention of letting prey escape. Using its final charge's force, it leaped high out of the shallow water. Massive body tore through the air, gaping fang-filled maw opening wide, lunging at me with a foul gusting wind. If that bite landed, even with my strong physique, a huge chunk of flesh would be torn off. Might be killed instantly. No room to retreat. The panic in my eyes vanished, replaced by the grim determination of a cornered man. I didn't turn to run. Planted my feet, gripped the oar with both hands like a spear, and thrust it violently into the monster fish's gaping mouth. The hardwood oar shattered instantly from the creature's terrifying bite force, splinters flying. But that brief obstruction was enough. The fish's lunge faltered. It crashed heavily onto the deck. The boat sank under the weight. Out of water, still ferocious, thrashing its tail, but movements severely restricted. I leaped off the boat. From a pile of rubble on shore, snatched a jagged head-sized river stone. You were the boss in the water. Now that you're on land, I'm sending you to your grave. Sidestepped a powerful tail whip, raised the stone high. The power generation techniques from sparring at the Zhao mansion paid off. Stance and waist unified, all strength channeled into my arms, brought the stone crashing down. Crack. The fish's head caved in slightly. Body convulsed violently, grating shriek. I didn't stop. Crack. 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 Again and again. Each blow accompanied by shattering bone and splattering flesh and blood. Didn't stop until the head was completely obliterated and it stopped moving, body only twitching from lingering nerve reflexes. Then I collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Gasping, entire body soaked in cold sweat and fish blood, reeking of foul stench. Hands trembling from excessive force, web between thumb and forefinger split open and bleeding. After calming down, I looked at the corpse. Even with its head smashed in, the blue-black scales still held a metallic sheen and radiated faint, ferocious, evil chi. This thing had boundless strength and scale armor like iron. Clearly no ordinary creature. I stroked the hard scales. Could it have transformed into a demon beast? If so, its armor, its teeth, even its flesh containing spiritual chi, all a huge windfall. Fortune favors the bold. The ancients truly did not lie. On the riverbank, moonlight cold and desolate, I slumped beside the reeking corpse, gasping. After regaining some strength, pushed myself up. Everything ached. Arms and the webbing between my thumbs especially. Burning fiery pain from the desperate bludgeoning, muscles twitching uncontrollably. Just as I was about to check my injuries, my panel appeared, vibrating faintly. Below the activated nourishing and exquisite line, a third line of text slowly materialized. Characters flickering, not yet set. 7 kills fate. Inactive. The note said it sought victory through peril, decisive and ruthless in slaughter. Wreathed in evil chi, combat intuition and explosive power greatly enhanced. Would grow stronger after every battle. 7 kills fate. My heart stirred. In astrology, the 7 kills was a star of misfortune, ruling slaughter, conquest, peril, volatility. But not entirely bad. If mastered, if tamed, it became a sign of great nobility, granting power over life and death. This was triggered by the life-or-death struggle. My first true battle against a creature far stronger than myself. I hadn't crumbled. I'd erupted with unprecedented ferocity and turned the tables. That mindset and experience were the very definition of the 7 kills. Although not activated yet, it meant I'd have a special talent for combat from now on. Good news. But fear washed over me recalling the fight. If the fish had been any stronger, or my reaction a split second slower, I'd be the one lying dead. When it came down to it, I just had too few techniques. If I'd had even a single offensive magic, basic spirit blade, firebomb, would I have needed to bludgeon it with a rock like some barbarian? Had to break through to chi cultivation and learn magic techniques as soon as possible. I found a sturdy rope on the boat, threaded it through the fish's gills. Dozens of pounds. The old me could never have dragged it. But with my enhanced physique, just barely manageable. Under cover of darkness, avoided the main road, followed narrow paths between fields, slowly dragging my prize home. Late at night, parents already asleep, tiptoed to the backyard, hid the fish in the sweet potato cellar, covered it with thick hay to mask the smell. Finally let out a sigh of relief, tended to my scrapes by moonlight, then collapsed into bed, utterly exhausted. Next morning, woke as the sky began to brighten. Slept soundly, but the deep, aching soreness, like being taken apart and put back together, was a stark reminder. Changed into a long-sleeved, high-collar robe to cover the scrapes on my neck and wrists so my parents wouldn't worry. Went to the cellar. The fish hadn't started to rot despite being dead overnight. Blue-black scales still held a cold luster, emitting faint, bloody spiritual chi. I took out a bone-carving saber, pried off a few of the hardest scales from its back, cut off its 2 wire-like whiskers, wrapped everything in cloth. Needed to ask Master what this thing was. If it was a demon beast, it could be worth a fortune. At the Zhang mansion study, Taoist Zhang was sipping tea when I arrived so early. Noticed my stiff posture and the faint trace of lingering blood, evil chi. Frowned. Asked what was wrong. I didn't hide anything. Recounted the whole story. Renting the boat, cultivating in the river cove, being attacked by the strange fish, managing to kill it. Conveniently left out the new fate chart. A flicker of surprise, then deep admiration. Good lad. Guts. Just a beginner with no magic techniques, fighting a vicious creature in the water and coming out alive. That calm in the face of danger was more valuable than any natural talent. I placed the cloth bundle on the table. Hoped he could enlighten me about what this thing was. He picked up a bluish-black scale. Heavy, hard as iron. Pinched a whisker, sensing residual spiritual chi fluctuations. After a moment, set them down, shaking his head with a smile. Not a demon beast. A true demon beast, even the lowest tier, possessed awakened intelligence. Knew how to absorb the essence of sun and moon. Could use its own life-bound demon technique. If I'd encountered a true one, I'd already be a corpse. Even a single water arrow from it. How could I have smashed it to death with a rock? A chill went down my spine. He was right. The creature had been vicious but had no real intelligence. Only attacked mindlessly. That was the only reason I'd slipped through. It had lived a long time in a place rich with spiritual chi, the river cove I mentioned. Nourished by that chi, its body grew far stronger, armor hard as iron. At the same time, corrupted by evil chi in the wild, making it ferocious and bloodthirsty. But since it never gained true intelligence, it couldn't be considered a demon. And since it had claimed that chi-rich cove, the purifying spirit flow was its private hoard. When I barged in to steal that chi, it naturally fought to the death. I finally understood. But then his tone shifted, faint smile. Though not a demon beast, this creature was a rare opportunity. Its flesh and blood had been transformed by years of spiritual chi nourishment, now containing pure essence chi and spiritual power. For a chi cultivation stage cultivator, especially a young one still growing and developing his body, it was a great nourishing item. Effects no less potent than expensive low-tier spiritual cuisines in the city. Eat it in portions while cultivating might boost progress. The scales could be polished into a simple heart-protecting mirror for defense. My disappointment vanished, replaced by pleasant surprise. A great nourishing item, on par with spiritual cuisine. What was I lacking most? High-quality energy to keep up with my nourishing and exquisite consumption. This mutated fish, over 100 caddies, would last quite a while. He also pulled out a cyan porcelain bottle. Rejuvenation powder ointment. Told me to take off my shirt. My back and shoulders were covered in dark purple bruises from the fish ramming me on the boat and the final struggle. He dipped a fingertip in the light green ointment, flicked it with spiritual power to spread evenly. A piercing cold seeped in, then the fiery pain rapidly faded. Stiff muscles felt gently smoothed out. Much of the fatigue in my meridians dissipated. Miraculously effective on flesh wounds. My injuries weren't serious, but needed treatment to prevent clotted blood becoming a hidden danger. I spent half a day at the Zhang mansion, taking advantage of the dense spiritual chi to stabilize my slightly fluctuating aura from the battle. Asked a few more details about the chi filtering technique, then took my leave. That afternoon, detoured to the Zhao mansion for sparring. Today was a rest day, but duties couldn't be neglected. Despite injuries making my movements occasionally stiff, I hadn't asked for a day off or uttered a single complaint. After last night's true life-and-death battle, my gaze had become even more steady and sharp. Facing the whistling fireballs, I no longer relied solely on instinct, could more accurately predict trajectory and threat level. That calm demeanor made Wushang give me a couple extra glances. This kid seemed to have grown up overnight. The once somewhat green boy now faintly exuded the ruthlessness of someone who'd seen real bloodshed. After the double hour, accepted my 300 cents. Filled with weary but fulfilling satisfaction, headed home. By the time I returned, nearly dusk, didn't disturb my mother cooking. Changed into old work clothes and went to the cellar alone. The 100-catty mutated fish still lay quietly on dry grass, exuding faint bloody spiritual chi. Couldn't eat it all at once. Wielding my bone-carving saber, I began processing it. As the blade sliced through the belly, none of the expected fishy stench, instead a strange, fresh fragrance. Bright red flesh with clear texture, like fine jade. What a pity. The flesh was a great supplement, but being from a mutated beast, it contained trace amounts of evil chi. I had the chi filtering technique and cultivation to neutralize it, but my parents and siblings were mortals. They'd suffer vomiting and diarrhea at best, grave illness at worst. This one was all for me. Cut a few large chunks from the tenderest belly part, 3 or 4 catties, for tonight's dinner. Rubbed coarse salt on the rest. Hung them in a ventilated spot to air dry. Long-term food reserve. Enough for half a month. To avoid wasting spiritual chi, simplest cooking method, boiling. Sliced fish into boiling water with just a pinch of salt. Rich meaty aroma filled the small room. Picked up a slice with chopsticks. Melted in my mouth. No earthy or fishy taste. Only ultimate freshness and tenderness. Before I could savor it, the meat transformed into a scalding hot current sliding down into my stomach. Boom. Like swallowing a ball of fire. The nourishing and exquisite fate chart instantly activated, operating frantically. The hot current exploded into immense essence, chi rushing toward my limbs and bones like a bursting dam. My face flushed crimson, sweat beads the size of soybeans on my forehead, wisps of white steam rising from the top of my head. Compared to pork and chicken, this mutated fish meat was on a completely different level. After just a few bites, unbearable heat throughout my body, meridians bulging to the point of aching. Put down the bowl immediately, sat cross-legged. Refine. Operating the small chi gathering technique at full power, the frenzied essence chi was gradually tamed and purified, transforming into threads of pure spiritual power flowing into my dantian. When I opened my eyes, the moon was high. Let out a long breath that condensed like a white ribbon, shooting 3 feet before dissipating. Panel check. Realm. Chi introduction, 28 out of 100. Small chi gathering technique. Skilled, 145 out of 200. Just one meal, and my spiritual chi progress increased by a full point. Technique proficiency shot up by 10. Before, gaining 1 thread in 2 days was divine speed. Now, thanks to this spiritual flesh, I could gain a thread a day, maybe more. This was what real cultivation felt like. I clenched my fists, feeling power brimming within me, ready to burst out. With this preserved food stock plus the Samu River treasure spot, the coming days would be my golden age for sprinting through chi cultivation. 3 months? Maybe it wouldn't be long at all before I touched that threshold. More than half a month passed. The height of summer arrived in Anping County. My life became extremely disciplined, almost tedious. Before dawn, Samu River for water spiritual chi. Daytime, Master Lu's lectures. Evening, Zhao Mansion to get beaten up for money. Night, home to cultivate relentlessly, aided by the nourishment of mutated fish flesh. I'd consumed more than half the 100-gene fish. Every bite transformed into surging essence chi, steadily pushing my cultivation higher. Late one night, moonlight fluid as water outside. I sat cross-legged on my bed, wearing the calm heart jade ring, circulating my technique as usual. With each breath, surrounding spiritual chi flowed in like a trickling stream. Then a peculiar buzzing sound resonated deep in my mind. Felt like an invisible force had forcibly widened the meridians throughout my body. The circulation path for my spiritual chi, which had been somewhat sluggish, was now incredibly smooth. If before it was a trickling brook needing careful guidance, now it was a surging river, flowing unimpeded. Absorption speed increased by a huge margin. Panel materialized. Small chi gathering technique. Mastery, 1 out of 500. Finally, mastery. The qualitative change from the skill breakthrough was significant. Even without eating any spiritual flesh, just relying on the mastery level technique and nourishing and exquisite, my absorption speed far surpassed before. Nearly reached the level I'd achieved while consuming the fish. Realm column. Chi introduction, 52 out of 100. Past halfway. Speed stabilized at 1 strand per day. Even without external aids, definitely reaching perfection within 2 months. Next morning, I didn't go to the river. Changed into a clean robe and went straight to the Zhang mansion. Taoist Zhang placed a hand on my wrist, carefully examining my pulse. Despite his usual composure, astonishment appeared on his face. Over 50 strands. Excellent. Even without pills, this speed was enough to stand proud among peers. My decision to also cultivate the water technique was right. That purifying spirit flow was quite beneficial for my constitution. I bowed, then made my request. A few days ago I'd encountered a strange fish. Fortunate enough to slay it, but became keenly aware of my lack of offensive measures. Now that spiritual chi was past the halfway mark, I boldly asked, might I learn an offensive magic technique? To prepare for future combat. He didn't agree immediately. Fell into contemplative silence. Generally, practicing magic techniques before reaching the first layer could lead to spiritual chi exhaustion and damage one's foundation. Major taboo. But looking at me, physically robust, abundant spiritual chi, mentality far beyond my peers, he ultimately nodded. I cultivated the water technique with purifying spirit flow as my foundation. My recovery rate was far beyond ordinary. Acceptable to start learning early. He took a cyan jade scroll from his sleeve. Not some common water bullet technique from the marketplace. A clever skill he'd chanced upon in his early years of travel. Called Spirit Water Needle. The water bullet was powerful but noisy, consumed a lot of energy, easily dodged. The Spirit Water Needle was all about highly compressing water's spiritual chi and firing it as a fine needle. Stealthy, strong penetration, consumed very little energy. Perfectly suited for someone like me, not abundant in chi yet, but with keen perception. He demonstrated. A light tap of his index finger, no visible hand seal. Water vapor in the air instantly condensed at his fingertip into a barely perceptible deep blue fine needle. A soft sound, no cutting through the air. The needle pierced through a sturdy ironwood pillar in the corner, leaving a bottomless little hole with not even the slightest crack. Terrifying penetrative power. My eyes lit up. Practically a divine skill tailor-made for me. In the following days, another item was added to my schedule. In the reed marshes on the Sanmu riverbank, a young man could often be seen pointing his finger at the reeds. At first, it didn't go smoothly. Spiritual chi was difficult to condense, dissipating into mist the moment it left my fingertip. Or the compression wasn't strong enough, the projectile shooting out limply like I was just sprinkling water. But bolstered by my rapid thinking fate chart, I didn't get discouraged. Continuously adjusted the circulation paths and compression frequency. After hundreds of failures, my fingertip finally trembled as I found the critical point. A crooked water needle shot out and struck a reed stalk. Failed to pierce through, but left a deep, white mark. Power still shallow, but I beamed at the new line on my panel. Spirit Water Needle, beginner. First step always the hardest. As long as I gotten my foot in the door, the rest was just grinding. Spring passed, and summer arrived. The 3-month term for the intersect study came to an end. In Calmheart Hall, cicadas outside were as noisy as ever, but the atmosphere inside was unusually somber. Taoist Zhang said the 3 months were up. According to Academy rules, the intersect study wasn't one time. To continue advanced studies and receive guidance, we had to pay the tuition for the next term. 10 taels of silver. Those 4 words weighed on everyone's heart like a great mountain. Li Jinyuan looked relaxed. A casual wave, his book servant presented a silver ingot prepared long ago. For the young master of the Li family, this was merely the cost of a few fewer trips to the tavern. Gu Qinghe's expression was much more grave. He pulled a patched coin purse from his robes. Fingers rough from long-term sword practice and his work at the Zhao mansion. Blood money earned over 3 months as a human punching bag, getting thrown around and bleeding, plus manual labor at the docks. He counted and recounted, took a deep breath, handed it over with a trembling hand. He would continue. Then Wang Xiaolu, the fisherman's son, usually so quick-witted, stood with his head bowed, face flushed red. After a long silence, as if all strength had left him, he slowly stood and gave Taoist Zhang a deep bow. Voice choked. His father had injured his leg while fishing a few days ago. All the family's savings went to medicine. This path of cultivation, he could no longer afford to walk it. Taoist Zhang sighed softly, told him to go. Even without the inner sect, as long as he was diligent, there were other paths. He'd achieved qi sensitivity in 3 months, could easily go back and live as a wealthy man. After class, I walked Wang Xiaolu to the academy gate. He glanced back at the Calm Heart Hall plaque, eyes full of reluctance. Told me he was truly envious, not only talented, but taken as Master Zhang's personal disciple. But he was content. At least got his foot in the door, gained qi sensitivity. Could go back and help the family with fishing. With strength and eyesight a little better than a mortal's, life should be pretty good. Watching his lonely figure retreat and disappear at the end of the street, I felt a mix of complex emotions. The path to immortality was cruel. This was the first filter, wealth. Without my panel, without meeting a benevolent master who waived tuition, I might have been one of those leaving in despair today. Gu Qinghe walked up beside me. Watching Wang Xiaoyou's departing figure, his eyes revealed a fierce glint, a wildness forged by life's hardships. He didn't want to go back to fishing. Even if he died on the martial arts arena at the Zhao Mansion, even if he had to be a human target for the rest of his life, he would climb up. Didn't want to live that hand-to-mouth life anymore. Then he asked if I'd paid my share. Not wanting to provoke his fragile pride, I answered vaguely. Master gave me a few more days, still needed to find a way. He nodded, patted my shoulder. Not easy for any of us. Would be better if we could become real cultivators one day. We stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the sun set over Anping County. Fewer and fewer fellow travelers on the road of cultivation. But I clenched my fists. I wouldn't just stay on this road. I'd walk at the very front, reach the very top. Deep in the night, at the Samu River heart, I skillfully steered my small boat to the river cove where spiritual qi was most dense. Silence reigned, broken only by the whisper of breeze through reeds. I sat cross-legged. Just as I entered meditation and tried to draw upon the familiar purifying spirit flow, I sensed something wrong. The flow, which had always been stable here, docile as a lamb, was unusually restless tonight. The faint blue specks of light were slowly moving downstream, like a migrating school of fish. No matter how I tried to guide them, I couldn't stop them from leaving. It was drifting away. Alarm flared. I'd heard in a general studies class that this type of ownerless heaven and earth spiritual flow was inherently unpredictable, following the water veins. It had only gathered here temporarily. Now it was leaving. This was my cultivation accelerator. Without the boost, my training speed would suffer. Should I follow? I gripped my paddle, unwillingness flashing in my eyes, about to row in pursuit. Then the 7 kills fate chart issued an unprecedentedly strong warning. The hair-raising feeling of being targeted by an apex predator. I froze. Hair on my body stood on end, staring at the deep water beneath the spiritual flow. By faint moonlight, I could vaguely make out a suffocatingly massive black shadow moving slowly in the depths, several times larger than the strange fish I'd killed. The mere undercurrent from its movements created bizarre whirlpools on the surface, making even my small boat sway gently. It seemed to be guarding the mass of spiritual qi, or perhaps waiting for it to drift to a specific location before swallowing it whole. A faint yet palpable pressure emanated from it, even breaking the surface and making it difficult to breathe. A true demon beast? Or an even stronger mutated beast? Cold sweat drenched my back, palms slick, gripping the paddle so tightly my knuckles turned white. I might have over 50 strands of spiritual qi and a beginner-level spirit water needle, but in front of a subaquatic behemoth like this, I wouldn't even be a morsel between its teeth. The creature wouldn't even need to attack. A simple turn of its body would capsize my boat. Going down there was suicide. I took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the greed. You only get one life. You can always find more opportunities. That kind of restraint was often harder than taking a risk, product of a clear understanding of my own strength and the wisdom required for survival. I didn't follow. slowly rode back into the shadows of the reeds, trying not to make a sound. With a complex gaze, I watched the pale blue spiritual light slowly recede into the distance, finally vanishing around a bend. The massive underwater shadow followed, leaving behind nothing but a deathly still river surface. My strength was still too weak. Gazing at the empty river, I felt a sense of loss, quickly replaced by fighting spirit. If I were already a chi cultivation cultivator, would I have needed to be so timid? Had to break through as soon as possible. Once my divine skill was perfected, I'd come back and investigate the bottom of this river. Having lost the efficient boost from the purifying spirit flow, my cultivation speed dropped from less than a day per strand back to 1 strand per day. Even so, this left ordinary people in the dust. Compared to classmates struggling for a single strand over several days, I was still a genius to be looked up to. I wasn't discouraged. Adjusted my mindset and, relying on my mastery-level small chi gathering technique and the water grind, began a long period of accumulation. For the next 2 months, my life became extremely disciplined and monotonous. Every morning, Samu River banks. Even without the special spiritual flow, the water chi was still denser than elsewhere. Every weekend, Zhao Mansion for sparring. Zhao Xing's firebomb grew more skilled, power increasing each session. But my responses became more composed too. On several occasions when his offense was too fierce and forced me into a corner, I subconsciously applied the principles of the spirit water needle. Didn't use the actual move, but the water vapor I guided with my fingertips was enough to cleverly dissipate the firebomb's impact, secretly astonishing Wushang. Evenings entirely on spirit water needle practice. Progressed from hitting stationary reeds to accurately striking leaves swaying in the wind, and finally to shooting down flying mosquitoes. Every flicker of my fingertips was another step in honing control over spiritual chi. Through monotonous repetition, the proficiency on my panel steadily increased. 1 month, 2 months. Time trickled away like fine sand through fingers. Cicadas in Anping County grew sparse as autumn air deepened. My total spiritual chi slowly climbed from 52 to 60, 70, 85, 95. As my body became more suffused with chi, my aura grew more ethereal. Once slightly dark skin now had a faint flowing luster from spiritual chi nourishment. The divine light in my eyes was restrained. Even standing still, I gave off the impression of a deep still abyss or a towering mountain. Finally, one night 2 months later, I looked at my panel, chi introduction, 99 out of 100, and stopped cultivation. From my Dantian chi came a distinct feeling of fullness, like a bottle filled to the brim, ready to overflow with a single additional drop. The sign of a breakthrough. That night, a thunderstorm raged outside. Fat raindrops hammered the eaves like war drums. Gale-force winds slapped rain against the window lattice. For an ordinary person, a stormy night with chaotic, violent spiritual chi was the worst possible time for a breakthrough. A slight misstep could mean drawing thunder and fire into the body. But for me, cultivating a water technique with a foundation of purifying spiritual energy, the abundant water vapor in the air was a heaven-sent boon. I sat cross-legged on my bed, put on the calm heart jade ring. Mind instantly became tranquil as a deep pool. Tonight's the night. Took a deep breath and operated the small chi gathering technique with all my might. As I breathed, the incredibly active water spiritual chi outside was drawn to me, surging into my body like fledgling swallows returning to their nest, providing the final crucial 100th strand. Boom. As the 100th strand fell into place, quantity triggered qualitative transformation. The chaotic, swirling vortex of chi in my dantian was suddenly crushed by an invisible immense force, collapsing violently inward toward its center. For an ordinary person, compressing 100 strands into a single thread was extremely dangerous. The slightest miscalculation meant backlash, damaged meridians, complete dissipation of cultivation. But at that moment, the unceasing labor fate chart on my panel flashed faintly. The rampaging spiritual chi seemed to turn into obedient soldiers. Without me expending effort to suppress it, the chi began compressing and transforming in an orderly fashion along a predetermined path. During compression, the purifying spirit flow, which made up the majority of my chi, showed its domineering nature. It rapidly assimilated the original pure chi, dyeing the entire vortex a pure azure blue. Condense. I roared inwardly. A silent boom echoed in my mind. The massive cloud of gaseous spiritual chi vanished completely. In its place, a single thread, fine as a strand of hair, but incomparably solid, glowing with deep blue light. Magical power. The moment it formed, it began circulating through my meridians on its own. Wherever it passed, minute impurities, trace evil chi from the mutated fish, toxins from years of mortal grains, were instantly washed away by the azure light. An unprecedented feeling of lightness spread through my entire body, every pore opening up to breathe. So this was the chi cultivation stage. I opened my eyes, a flicker of blue light in their depths. 5 senses infinitely magnified, could clearly hear each individual raindrop hitting the leaves outside. Clenched my fist, surging power coursing through me. If I encountered that strange fish again, I was confident I could obliterate it with a single punch. I raised my right hand, channeled the newborn strand of magical power to cast Spirit Water Needle. Before, it had taken 3 breaths and extreme care. Now, instantaneous. A speck of blue light flashed from my fingertip. The water needle, solid as a real needle, shot out instantly with bone-chilling coldness, pierced a hardwood plank and embedded deep in the earthen wall behind it, leaving only a tiny hole surrounded by faint white frost. After just that one attack, the thread of magical power in my dantian had been depleted by only a minuscule amount, already recovering fast by drawing on water vapor in the air. I did it. I looked at the blue magical power dancing on my fingertip, a confident smile playing on my lips. I'd finally become a true cultivator. The Taoist school selection? 90% certain I'd pass. And this special purifying power might just become my biggest trump card. At dawn on the Sanmu riverbank, thin mist like gauze shrouding the quiet reed marsh, I stood silently atop a smooth green stone polished by the river's current, eyes slightly closed. As I breathed in and out, the air around me seemed to solidify, an invisible pressure faintly emanating from me. Condense. I lightly tapped my right index finger into the air. The surrounding water vapor, as if answering some irresistible summons, rapidly converged at my fingertip. The water needle, which used to take 3 breaths to barely form, now solidified in a single breath. A fine dark blue needle, only about an inch long, yet emanating a chilling aura that made the heart palpitate, as if carved from the purest ice crystals. This was the Spirit Water Needle enhanced by purifying power. Not only did it form extremely quickly, but the spiritual power within was incredibly dense. I flicked my finger. The needle shot out without hesitation. It didn't dissipate upon leaving my body like magic formed from ordinary spiritual chi. Instead, like an exceptionally agile fish, it carved a graceful yet strange arc through the air, precisely piercing a withered yellow reed leaf drifting several meters away. A pinhole-sized round hole appeared in the center, edges perfectly smooth. Didn't even cause a flicker of movement, as if the leaf was always meant to have a hole in it. Panel check. Spirit Water Needle. Beginner, 29 out of 100. Proficiency wasn't at the next level yet, but with magical power enhancement, its strength was on a whole other level. If this hit someone, it could probably pierce right through flesh and blood. I nodded in satisfaction. Today was another sparring day at the Zhao Mansion. Perhaps it was time to show a little bit of my strength. After all, just taking beatings all the time wouldn't earn enough to support future cultivation. Besides, I wanted to test what my current combat abilities truly were. Afternoon at the Zhao Mansion's private courtyard. Waves of heat rolled across the martial arts arena. Zhao Xing roared, hands forming a spell. 2 firebombs shot out one after another, carrying scorching heat waves that cut off all of Gu Qinghe's escape routes. Under Wu Shang's strict tutelage, his firebomb technique had reached the skilled realm. Casting speed faster, power greater, could even manage a simple double shot. Gu Qinghe was struggling. Despite considerable progress over the months, more than half his spiritual chi capacity filled, body technique honed through repeated beatings, he couldn't keep up with the upgraded version. One firebomb exploded by his feet, shockwave knocking the shield from his hand. The other grazed his shoulder, scorching his sleeve and singeing his eyebrows. He rolled wretchedly to the side, covered in dust, gasping, eyes full of helplessness and unconcealable exhaustion. Next, Chu Bai. Zhao Xing gave no one a chance to catch their breath. Turned to me with a savage grin. Watch out. He'd been practicing this move for a long time, specifically for slippery eels like me. My expression was calm as I walked into the arena. Carried the round shield, long since blackened and mottled. Appeared completely defenseless, like a lamb to the slaughter. He unleashed 3 fire bombs in a triangular formation, momentum astonishing, intending to completely devour me. In his eyes, the attack was lightning fast, covering all angles, leaving me no choice but to block head-on. In my vision, the scene was completely different. Activating the divine sense of a Qi cultivation stage cultivator, everything around me seemed to slow to half speed. The flow of fire's spiritual Qi in the air was clearly visible. Even the slight tremor of Zhao Xing's muscles as he raised his hand and the subtle shift in his gaze were laid bare. Too slow. I'd grown accustomed to his attack patterns. Didn't roll wretchedly like Gu Qinghe. With just a slight shift of my feet, my figure became as unpredictable as a willow catkin in the wind, yet perfectly avoided every sharp attack. The 3 fire bombs flew past, practically skimming my body. First past my left shoulder without touching the corner of my clothes. Second grazed my waist, stirring only a slight breeze. Third flew over my head, not even ruffling my hair. Incredibly perilous looking, like dancing on the edge of a blade. But in reality, as steady as Mount Tai. Gu Qinghe, who'd just scrambled to his feet, stared with wide eyes, mouth slightly agape. He and I had joined the Zhao mansion at the same time, progress always similar. If he'd faced those 3 fire bombs, he'd have had to raise his shield and block head-on. But I'd actually dodged them? Effortlessly, without messing up my footwork. Wushang set down his teacup, brows furrowed slightly, sharp eyes fixed on me. Over the next dozen breaths, Zhao Xing launched a dozen more frantic attacks. Each time, I made the most efficient and precise evasive maneuver at the very last moment. Not a fraction more, not a hair less. Such control over distance and timing was simply outrageous. This couldn't be luck or quick reflexes. This was prediction using divine sense. Only someone with divine sense could so accurately track the fluctuating trajectory of spiritual qi. My aura felt several times more substantial than before, and that keen perception of spiritual qi, Wu Shang's bold guess was forming. Had I already reached the threshold of qi cultivation, or even broken through? He yelled for Zhao Xing to stop. Zhao Xing looked disgruntled. He was just hitting his stride. Wu Shang ignored him, walked slowly to the center of the arena. Looked at me, calm and composed, not even breathing heavily. The corner of his mouth curved into a playful smile. Just being a target was a waste of my talent. The arena fell silent. Gu Qinghe stared blankly. Zhao Xing was equally baffled. Wu Shang looked at me bluntly. My aura was steady, body technique refined. I clearly had some insight into the use of spiritual qi. Rather than just taking hits like a training dummy, let's change the rules. I was allowed to fight back. Have a proper spar with the young master. Fight back? Zhao Xing's eyes lit up. He'd been frustrated he couldn't land a single hit. Knew I was slippery as an eel, but didn't realize I was hiding skills. Told me not to hold back, show him what I'd really got. If he couldn't beat me, he might as well give up on cultivating immortality. I feigned alarm, cupped my hands in refusal. I was merely a bit durable, didn't know any offensive techniques. If I injured him, terrible offense. He wouldn't blame me. The Zhao mansion was paying me precisely to put up a real fight. Hurry up, stop dilly-dallying like a sissy. Seeing no way out, I dropped the pretense. Tossed the round shield aside, assumed an opening stance. Zhao Xing attacked first. Full spiritual power, fiery glow intensifying, continuous stream of fire bombs sealing me from every direction. In the instant before the first one reached me, I didn't raise the shield. Bent my right index finger and flicked it gently. A tiny droplet of water flew from my fingertip. Inconspicuous, yet containing condensed piercing power. A special knack from practicing the spirit water needle countless times. The water droplet struck the fire bomb's weakest core point with pinpoint accuracy. Soft pop. The powerful fire bomb detonated prematurely in midair, dissolving into a shower of sparks like a popped balloon. Everyone present was stunned. Gu Qinghe's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He'd entered the inner sect with me, become sparring partners together, never seen me use special techniques like this. How did I suddenly learn to shatter a fire bomb with a single drop of water? Had I already mastered a magic technique? We'd achieved Chi introduction not long ago. He hadn't even grasped the basics of a magic technique, and I was already using one in a real fight? Zhao Xing felt a rush of unprecedented excitement. Nice move. Again, the battle escalated. Instead of clashing head-on with the high-penetrating spirit water needle, I transformed the water's spiritual chi into a soft force. Moved with fluid grace, at times pulling moisture from the air to form a curtain of water to obscure his vision, at others flicking a water droplet to disrupt his casting rhythm. Using softness to overcome hardness. 4 ounces moving 1,000 pounds. We were locked in a back-and-forth exchange, surprisingly evenly matched. After several dozen exchanges, Zhao Xing unleashed his ultimate move, fused 2 fire bombs into a single washbasin-sized explosive fireball that roared toward me on a wave of blistering heat. My eyes narrowed, could no longer hold back so much. Blue light flashed at my fingertip as a solid line of water shot out. No longer the soft force, a sharp piercing power. Break. The line of water met the fireball head-on. Water and fire crashed together, kicking up a thick cloud of white steam that enveloped the entire arena. Massive shockwave sent rubble flying, heat wave forcing Gu Qinghe to retreat several steps. When the steam dissipated, Zhao Xing was half kneeling on the ground, spiritual power depleted, panting heavily. On the body-protecting magic shield before him was a distinct wet mark, right at the level of his throat. If this had been a real fight, he'd be a corpse. Meanwhile, I was also half kneeling in the distance, feigning exhaustion, face slightly pale. Cupped my hands. The young master's might was truly divine. I lost by half a move. Zhao Xing roared with laughter. Exhilarating. Amazing fight. 1,000 times better than fighting useless lumps of wood. He might be arrogant, but he wasn't a fool. He could clearly see I'd held back on the final move. That line of water wouldn't have pierced his magic shield. It would have pierced his throat. Wu Shan gave me a long, deep look. He was now certain. I'd already reached the Qi cultivation stage. Moreover, my control over spiritual Qi far surpassed his own young master's. But he saw the truth and said nothing. Excellent. Today's spar was of great benefit to the young master's combat experience. Zhao Xing, in high spirits, waved his hand grandly. A reward. From now on, my pay was raised to 600 cents. This was the kind of sparring partner he needed. Gu Qinghe stood by, dumbstruck, looked at me with an incredibly complicated expression, happy for his friend, but at the same time feeling the immense gulf that had opened between us. A few months ago we'd been at the same starting point. Now I could stand on equal footing with the young master of the Zhao family, perhaps even surpassed him. Meanwhile, he was still scrambling pathetically to dodge fire bombs. I accepted the heavy pouch of silver coins, expression perfectly calm. Leaving the Zhao mansion, the lingering glow of the setting sun stretched my shadow long. 600 cents tucked away, naturally in high spirits. My gaze turned toward the Zhang mansion in the eastern part of the city. Now that I'd broken through to Qi cultivation, it was only right to report such a major event to my master immediately. In this cultivation realm, hiding one's cultivation from your master was a major taboo. Besides, Taoist Zhang had shown me great kindness, and I'd need his guidance for the upcoming Taoist school selection. When I arrived, the sky was growing dark, a lamp already lit in the study. Taoist Zhang was holding a Tao scripture, poring over it by lamplight. The moment I stepped through the door, his gaze sharpened. His perception was exceptionally keen. Though I still wore the same green robes, my aura had undergone a world-altering transformation. The fluctuation of magical power, faint yet incredibly solid, could not escape his notice even with me intentionally suppressing it. You broke through? A flicker of disbelief crossed his eyes. I didn't say much. Simply smiled, raised my right hand, pointed with my index finger. The air shimmered. A thread of ethereal blue water instantly formed at my fingertip, weaving through the air like a spiritual serpent before vanishing. The transformation of magical power, controlled as easily as one's own limbs. A true technique of the Qi cultivation stage. I said I was fortunate. Last night during the thunderstorm, I'd been contemplating the rain and inspiration struck. Aided by the abundant moisture, I broke through the 100 threads pass in one fell swoop. The teacup in his hand trembled, a few drops of tea spilling onto the desk. He'd expected me to break through soon, but not this quickly, and certainly not this smoothly. The bottleneck for chi cultivation was known as the 100 Threads Pass. Seemed like a single obstacle, but it had barred the path of countless geniuses. Ordinary disciples would burn incense, purify themselves in a quiet chamber, need their masters as guardians, have barrier-breaking pills at the ready, painstakingly enter seclusion for several days. But me? Quietly, without a guardian, without a pill, without even a heads-up, broken through all on my own in my dilapidated hut. He took a deep breath to calm himself. His eyes filled with awe. It seemed my foundation was far more solid than he'd imagined. The purifying spirit flow was exceptionally compatible with me. That must be why the breakthrough came so naturally. What he didn't know was that this was hardly chance. It was the absurd, bottleneck-ignoring effect of the unceasing labor panel. Now that I'd reached chi cultivation, I had one foot in the door of the Taoist school. He stroked his beard, deeply gratified. His closed-door disciple was truly a natural-born cultivator. But I must not grow complacent. At most 1 month until the Taoist school selection. My cultivation was sufficient, but I was still lacking in the application of magic techniques and practical combat experience compared to noble family descendants who'd had famous masters and family members to spar with since childhood. I nodded. That was why I'd come here today. He mused for a moment, then made his decision. For the next month, I could skip general studies at the academy. He'd speak to Master Lu on my behalf. I needed to do only one thing: train my techniques. Take the spirit water needle from beginner to skilled. Beginner just meant I could cast it. Skilled meant during the fast-paced assessment, I could use it at will, hit whatever I aimed at, and even strike first despite starting second. A sharp glint in my eyes. This was what I'd planned all along. To give me a helping hand, he produced a small cyan porcelain bottle from his sleeve. A bottle of chi recovery pills, 10 in all. Not for increasing cultivation, but specifically for restoring spiritual power. My magical power was newly formed and thus limited. If I relied solely on meditation to recover, I couldn't practice my magic technique more than a few times a day. For the next month, I had to be hard on myself. Exhaust my spiritual power practicing, take a pill, meditate to recover, fully recovered, exhaust again. Repeat the cycle. This extreme training would not only grind up skill proficiency in the shortest time, but the constant cycle of depletion and replenishment would also temper the resilience of my meridians. Allow me to achieve a microscopic level of control over spiritual power. The process would be arduous, even painful, but if I could endure it, my foundation would far surpass my peers. A warm feeling washed over me. Although chi recovery pills were only low tier, they were a hot commodity for chi cultivation stage cultivators. A bottle like this would cost a few taels of silver at least. I accepted the porcelain bottle with both hands and bowed solemnly. I was not afraid of hardship. I would not disappoint his high hopes. Outside the Zhang mansion, the night wind was cool. I tightened my grip on the porcelain bottle, a fire called ambition burning in my eyes. Arduous. For someone like me, who had the panel, a process where effort guaranteed reward, watching proficiency tick upward, wasn't arduous at all. On the contrary, it was the most addictive pleasure in the world. I gazed up at the bright moon. 1 month left. I needed to raise the spirit water needle to at least the skilled level. Judging by past progress, that shouldn't be too hard. But just how far I could take it, hard to say. There was only one word for it: train.